Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I. And guess what? Why not bring back the pictures? Your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your sommelier of cinema, oops, I forgot that, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your archbishop of Banterbury, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, I am robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. As all of you know, we are in the midst of the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. We debuted film number 4 today, Wiener Kill, a film that I have to say that I've watched like 10 times, and it never ceases to make me chuckle. It reminded me of like something R. Crumb might draw, or Cheech and Chong, a scene from a Cheech and Chong film from a long time ago. It really cracked me up. I just don't know why it was so funny to me, but it was. You know, what's amazing about this film festival is you just don't know what you're going to get. I mean, every day there's something new in the inbox, and I can't wait to share them all with you. I just hope that people keep sending in films. You know, the film festival is only going to be as good as the entries are. So it's quite amusing to watch them. I mean, it really is. I wanted to see what you guys would do creatively, and boy, so far I'm not disappointed. You just never know what you're going to get. Also, I want to point out that the voting for the poster competition is currently going on, and every day you can vote every day. You can only vote once, but you can vote every day, and every day the posters shift around, so there is no bias in terms of poster positioning or location. They move all the time. I don't know if they move the same for everybody. That would be interesting. I guess they do, because when you log in, it would probably be the same for everyone. At least that's what I would imagine. And I have to say, there's been a lot of voting. We've had hundreds and hundreds of votes come in. It's very interesting to see those votes coming in, but it's great. I hope all of you are telling everybody you know about voting for your poster if you made one. Why not? I firmly encourage stuffing the ballot box. You can only stuff it once a day unless you have all of your friends, and I think that's all part of it. I think that's all part of online voting. In terms of voting for things like this. The more the word gets out, the more people you have to vote for your poster, the better off we all are, aren't we? And today's going to be a special day. I was just having some technical difficulties, but Brett Pierce, the director of The Wretched, a film that I am very interested in. First of all, I think it's a wonderful movie. It's both modern in its sensibility, and it's a throwback to creature features. It reminded me of a film. It's got a combination, a cross between, I don't know, a sensibility of Stephen King, which it reminded me of a good Stephen King story. But there's a lot of other things at play, and I think it belongs to a genre of film that we're seeing sort of a resurgence. Obviously, movies like The Ritual that I saw on Netflix, which I also liked very much. This sort of backwoods, or actually not backwoods. I mean, this takes place in a resort community, sort of a vacation community on the lake. But I really liked this film. I mean, it has family dysfunction in it. It has a great witch, and I really liked the film. And Brett Pierce co-directed the film with his brother, and he should be here shortly, probably around 1:30, to join us. I might have a few technical difficulties to surmount when he shows up, but hopefully not. And it's going to be great to speak with him. I can't wait to talk about his movie. But what's really interesting to me about this film, and I covered this film a little bit this summer, in the midst of a global pandemic, and all movie theaters were closed, The Wretched is a film that set a box office record this summer, and I would like to recap that record with you. and explain where we are. This was from Variety. Rebecca Rubin wrote this, and this was from May 29th of this year, May 29th, 2020. Here's how low-budget horror film The Wretched is breaking box office records. Indie horror film The Wretched is inching towards a milestone, eyeing the top spot on the box office charts for the 5th weekend in a row. It's a rare feat that hasn't been achieved since Marvel's superhero juggernaut Black Panther debuted in 2018. Notching that particular benchmark in this case comes with a pretty big caveat. The Wretched is one of the only movies on the box office charts, but its relative dominance of a sparse field highlights what has become a winning strategy for IFC Films, the specialty label behind the supernatural thriller. At a time when Hollywood studios have delayed, amended, or scrapped plans to debut major movies, IFC Films has decided to keep release dates and continue rolling out the films as scheduled. It's allowed the company to carve out a prime position at the few movie-going venues, most of which are drive-in theaters, that have been able to safely remain open during the coronavirus outbreak. The unusual circumstances have fostered something of an unlikely relationship. Usually this time of year marks the start of the summer movie season, offering up the big-budget comic book adventures or sequels in popular franchises that drive-in theaters rely on to draw sizable crowds. Drive-ins have still been playing classics like Jaws and movies that opened before the pandemic hit, such as the Disney animated film Onward and The Invisible Man from Universal and Blumhouse. But for fresh content, cinema owners have increasingly turned to indie titles that typically populate art houses. Drive-ins traditionally play tentpoles, notes IFC Films co-president Lisa Schwartz. The integration has been a nice moment because it made sense on both sides. Since March, IFC Films has released a handful of new movies, including The Trip to Greece, the psychological thriller Swallow that we reviewed on Whining About Movies, and How to Build a Girl with Beanie Feldstein. It has also dug into its library, re-releasing past hits like Sleeping with Other People and Rust Creek to make up double features. Because their films cost less to make than most studio movies, it's less of a financial risk to keep the content coming, even though traditional brick-and-mortar theaters across the country have been closed for months. So far, those titles have collected over $75,000 from less than a dozen seasonal drive-ins. The bulk of those ticket sales have come from The Wretched, which has earned $660,000 to date. For a low-budget movie, that's a solid result in any climate. In fact, in any other time, it would rank among the studio's biggest earners of the year, and IFC Films have been available to rent at home the whole time, going against conventional wisdom like streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus will keep audiences on their couches. In the coming weeks, the other studios will follow a similar path for movies like the musical drama The High Note and Andy Samberg's romantic comedy Palm Springs, both of which are simultaneously launching on digital rental services and drive-in theaters that are open. But the increased competition might not be a problem for IFC. At first, only a small number of drive-ins were able to serve customers. Now that some states are beginning to relax stay-at-home measures, over 150 outdoor movie-going spaces have gotten permission from the government to open. And then this article goes on to talk about drive-ins and all of that, which is kind of old news now. But I really love this. All new, 2 blood-soaked shockers. Something wicked wants inside at your local drive-in. The Wretched. I love this. I mean, look at that. Really, really liked this a lot. So anyway, I found that to be quite an inspiring story. And Brett Pierce is going to be here, as I said, probably around 1:30 to talk about The Wretched. Now, we're in the midst, of course, of October, and on Whining About Movies, we're doing our horror movie retrospective, and we're doing A Nightmare on Elm Street tonight, Wes Craven's classic film from 1984 that spawned a TV series. It spawned many, many, many sequels. It spawned a remake. And one of the more interesting horror franchises to me, I much prefer the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise to the Friday the 13th franchise. I think there's a lot more going on. It's more imaginative, the interesting set pieces, all of that. Really, I love the Nightmare franchise, and it was fun to go back and revisit the original film. So we'll be talking about that tonight. But one of the things that I wanted to do on the channel was hopefully set up interviews with filmmakers to talk about their experiences, mostly doing lower budgeted fare. How did they get into filmmaking? Why did they get into filmmaking? What was the road? Everybody has a different road to travel, and I think it'll be interesting hearing from Brett about how did he get The Wretched made, and we'll talk to him shortly. But I figured we'll do the show a little bit backwards first, in the sense that I will, obviously I can go to letters because I have so many letters that I didn't get to. So I think I'm going to read some letters before Brett gets here, because why not? Why not? You guys love when I read your letters anyway, which is always a good thing. So, yes, and there are many. My God, there are so many letters. So let's just jump into and seeing who's here first. This one comes from Angel Sabino. Angel Sabino says, so let's talk about Tenet and how it single-handedly eradicated the holiday movie season. Hello, Mr. Burnett. I believe it's been over a year since I've sent in a letter to the network, but with everything going on in the world and how it affects many of us in the Post-Geek singularity, I wanted to chime in and give my opinion about Tenet. Uh-oh. I know you still have not seen it, and I definitely look forward to your review once you do, but honestly, I believe Christopher Nolan's Tenet basically torpedoed the entire holiday season. I was... Wow, don't mince words. What do you really think? I was fortunate that I was able to see an IMAX screening of the first film on September 2nd. The theater handled the seating well enough, but it could have been better. There was only one seat empty between myself and the next patron, but on my left there were 3 empty seats. What happened there? This didn't bother me since we all had masks on. Anyway, the movie began. There was no Dune trailer at my screening. It was bombastic, it was thrilling, it kept me thinking, and then literally 5 minutes left into the film, and it stopped. Yes, there were the usual what the fuck's being shouted out, but it quickly changed to comments asking, what the hell did I just watch? The manager quickly came out and apologized, got everything back on track, and the final minutes of the film played. As I walked out of the theater, I overheard many discussions from groups and couples trying to figure out what we just saw. This definitely gave me pause. I've enjoyed many of Nolan's films, but after watching Tenet, I was left with the same feeling that many other audiences and audience members were apparently feeling. Why did I have to think so much during this film? Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a film that makes you think, but did we really want something like this as our first big return to movies during the pandemic? I honestly just wanted to have a good 2 hours of popcorn fun. Don't get me wrong, Tenet is a good movie, but not great. At least not for me. I've read and watched many of the reviews about the film and also watching its box office, which continues to go down week to week. Of course, with New York and LA still not having theaters open, we all knew this would affect the box office, but let's look at what else is going on. In areas where theaters are open and CDC guidelines are being followed, people have not been flocking to the movies, but I can tell you that restaurants and gyms definitely have been seeing foot traffic. I personally have seen things that make me shake my head and just say, nope, not going there. On the other hand, in theaters where I see steps being taken to protect us and be safe, it boggles my mind that people don't feel safe enough to still sit in a theater with aggressive social distancing. I understand eating out and keeping yourself fit are things many people value over going to the movies, but the exposure factor that I see can happen at these places astounds me. I like eating out, but going to the gym, and I like going to the gym, but I love the movie-going experience. It saddens me that many people are so reluctant to go back here in the States, but then I go back to the film that was supposed to reignite the passion, Tenet. I just feel that it was too much for us to take in. I try and describe the film to people I know and basically definitely believe I don't give it justice and say, go see it and then we'll talk. Which brings me to what has come next. Literally every week we have seen our entire fall holiday lineup of films disappear into 2021 and beyond in some cases. Of course, this comes directly from studios. Watching the box office for Tenet, let's not even talk about the Mulan experiment with Disney+. No one knew 2020 was going to be the year it has been, and it's definitely been a trying time for so many of us that have lost jobs, homes, and so much more that means something in the larger scheme of things. Then we have those of us that do need seeing movies in a theater because it's our drug of choice. I have seen you in recent weeks, Mr. Burnett, literally seem like you're taking massive gut punches as each film we anticipate is taken off the schedule and pushed into next year. Believe me, I feel the same. Yesterday's updates about Dune, The Batman, Flash, Shazam 2, Fast 9, and oh so many others being delayed, I can't even keep up right now. Seems like a barrage of punches from Rocky Balboa himself telling us to stay down and take it. I can't imagine the Oscars happening, even with the delay for submissions, because what films will be up for the different categories this year? Mostly Netflix films and the handful we've gotten since January? My last film before the pandemic was Bloodshot back in March, and as soon as it was okay to go back in August, I was right there for night one for Unhinged and The New Mutants the following week. I miss my weekly ritual of being lost in the spectacle, wonder, excitement, and exploration of strange new worlds, but until then, at least we have the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival to look forward to. Yes, 2020 will go down in the history books for many different things to many people, but for the PGS, it will be the year without movie theaters. I'm looking at you, Christopher Nolan's Tenet. You were definitely the penguin that didn't survive jumping into the pool first. Live long and prosper, Mr. Burnett. Well, I got to tell you, Angel, you're not wrong. We were talking about, or I wasn't on today's show, but John was talking about it on his show. It's a bummer, man. I mean, I didn't know we'd ever have a year like this, the year without a Santa Claus, essentially. It was very, very, very frustrating to have this happen, and that's kind of why having Brett Pierce on the show is going to be interesting, because the idea of he succeeded. I mean, it's you have an independent filmmaker who was able to actually make it in the theater in this day and age, and with what was a pretty wonderful film. So that's obviously a pretty exciting thing. So I'm looking forward to having Brett come on. I mean, I've never actually met Brett Pierce, but I'm looking forward to discussing with him the experience of having one of the box office successes of 2020. What a strange year it has been. I'm going to read one more letter, and then I think I'm going to bring Brett on. So let's see what we have. I think Brett is actually here. I can hear him. He sounds good to me. I think things are all right. I'm going to read another letter here from David Miller. David Miller, a longtime imagination connoisseur. Greetings, Rob. And to my fellow imagination connoisseurs, hail, good fellows, well met. Well, since the theme of the day is not going to be movies, or not going to the movies, actually it is though, David, just different kinds of movies, I'd like to share my top 5 literary works that I can't believe haven't been made into a movie or TV series yet. Number 5 is Soon I Will Be Invincible. Yeah, I know superheroes written as real flawed people have been done to death, but I'm always up for another good one. And perhaps Wild Cards has this territory staked out, but I like Austin Grossman's lighthearted but earnest take on the trope. My only concern is that the thing I really like about this book is the writing style, and can that really be transferred to film? The act of reading is still a unique, singular experience. Well, since we're going to talk some indie horror, I would like to throw out, there is an indie superhero film that was directed by a woman that stars women of color that I don't think gets enough play, and that movie is called Fast Color. And it's a very interesting take on the superhero genre. It's streaming. It's also on Blu-ray. I have that. And, the next book, number 4, Woman on the Edge of Time. Marge Piercy writes a charming tale about a woman who is committed to a mental asylum for hearing voices. Unknown to her handlers, she is actually hearing voices from a future alternate reality that could come to pass in her world. Maybe there is only room for one time traveling female iconoclast story, and that slot has been filled by A Wrinkle in Time. Still, I think it's a story worth a movie. Ringworld. Larry Niven is revered. I love Ringworld, by the way. The Known Space. That's part of his Known Space. It is part of Known Space, right? His series. Larry Niven is revered and respected as a sci-fi master, so why isn't his seminal work sitting in your Blu-ray collection? beats me. Perhaps like the first Star Trek pilot, it's too cerebral for mass audiences. I think the closest we've come to media adaptation of Niven's characters is the Kzinti in an episode of the animated Star Trek series. That episode, by the way, David, is Slaver Weapon. It's too big to summarize here, just read it. Joe Haldeman's The Forever War. His sci-fi war epic, it's the antithesis to the war idolized in Starship Troopers. I ask you, who is more qualified to write a sci-fi tale of war than a physics major who was wounded in Vietnam? I love the complexity of science fact that Haldeman used here, and this very element may be what's killed its journey to cinema success. I think the film execs can understand it. That said, there's a war in it, and plenty of it. Even if the themes are beyond the scope of the average spreadsheet producer to grasp, there should be enough spectacle to keep the normies occupied. Nexus, a comic I love. Mike Barron and Steve Rude. Their groundbreaking sci-fi hero proves that being first never guarantees being successful. Even before the success of Guardians of the Galaxy on the big screen, I was agape as to why this property couldn't make the jump to the big or even small screen. Like Guardians, Nexus has an idiosyncratic and unique vision. The future world building is off the charts, with fully formed characters wrestling with themes of ethics, politics, love, justice, religion, and murder, with one man dropped in the middle of it all against his will. Also, like Guardians of the Galaxy, music plays a huge role in the proceedings. However, since you can't hear music in a comic book, it wasn't as successful as Guardians of the Galaxy. Nexus is about a man forced to execute mass murderers. This would be a difficult task, except that the mysterious agency that propels Nexus also imbues him with godlike power. As long as Nexus bumps off his targets, he is left alone. If not, he is tortured by unseen forces. That I said, Nexus is the proto-Guardians of the movies, not the comics, but it definitely deserves its moment in the spotlight. So that's as succinct as I can get. I'm sure everyone here has their own list like this. Until next time, Rob, keep your chin up and your brow low. David. Well, that's very nice of you to say, David. I will keep my brow low and my chin up. But look, all of those are great choices. And I think, look, in this day and age, I mean, their Netflix is adapting the horror novel Brand New Cherry Flavor by Todd Grimson that I read. I have a first edition hardcover. I bought it off the rack when it first came out. The fact that anybody even knows that book, I think what is amazing about genre material now is a lot of people that are growing up and have become filmmakers or work at the studios, all of this obscure stuff that they were reading in the 80s and the 90s and the aughts are now being snapped up and turned into things because people know them and they didn't know them before. So that's, I think, you might be surprised seeing what is coming down the pike. Obviously, even stuff like The Boys. I would not have thought necessarily that The Boys would have been something that would have been adapted into a series, and yet so well. But after after they did Preacher, why not do The Boys, which I actually think is better than their adaptation of Preacher, which is terrific. By the way, I would like to welcome Tom Jr. Jackson, who's here, is a PGS hero. With our new memberships as of beginning yesterday, it's crazy to see people's names pop up in colored bands. It's wacky stuff. So, yeah. Oh well, I had Brett, and I was going to bring him on, but they disappeared again. Let's see if they will come back. I'm sure they will. But he is here, and I just have to make sure he can jump on, and we can hear him, which will be the best way to do it. I've got one more letter to read. Actually, I got a lot more letters to read, so don't worry. I will get to all of your letters. Keith Jones writes in, and Keith Jones says, on the subject of werewolves. All right, I'll let you jump on. We'll talk about the subject of werewolves, Keith. On the subject of werewolves. This isn't a particularly long subject, but I just, while watching some content, caught a trailer for The Wolf of Snow Hollow, a new horror werewolf film that's apparently coming out that I knew nothing about. I'm fond of horror, but especially classic horror, and I always love a good riff on them. Some people are vampire people, and some people are slasher people, and I'm a werewolf I'm as a werewolf person as a horror fan can get. They're sort of in the underdog when it comes to representation, good representation in pop culture, but the morality play involved is the one that actually speaks to my heart and soul and addictions and lack of self-control the most. My constant second-guessing and questioning of my own less civilized patterns of behavior that are always threatening to do their own thing, regardless of the consequences. And the deeper unsettling natures of humans are banal instincts, which are easier to explore through sci-fi, fantasy, and monsters. I mean, Rob, I've got werewolf tattooed on my knuckles. I'm that guy, that one guy. Wait, you have werewolf tattooed on your knuckles like love and hate? You've got the were on one knuckle and the wolf on the other? I want to see that. Why didn't you send a picture, man? Come on, what's up? So first off, what's your favorite werewolf movie? That's a tough one. I have to say, honestly, probably, and this is disappointing to everybody. What is my favorite werewolf movie? I think American Werewolf in London is probably the most consistent. I mean, you rewatch it, you love that. Although I really do like Rob Bottin's effects in The Howling. Come on, I mean, those transformation effects. Let me give you a piece of my mind when Robert Picardo digs out a bullet from his forehead. That shit's dope. I really like that. So that's probably my favorite. And if it's different from your favorite, what's the best werewolf movie? I might be partial to the original Wolfman. The original Wolfman is great. That's kind of where it begins. I think it holds up. It has good performances, a tight script, and makes all the points it needs to make, and does all the work it needs. But to appease the schlock and gore horror fan in me, I've got to give honorables to Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers. By the way, for you physical media fans, the UK's Second Sight, my beloved Second Sight, who is putting out... they're putting out the Dawn of the Dead box set. They're putting out a sweet box set of Dog Soldiers. But for whatever reason, inexplicably, I don't know if it's a rights issue or what, but Second Sight is not shipping their Dawn of the Dead box set to the United States. I mean, perhaps my most eagerly awaited piece of physical media ever in my life. Richard Rubenstein allowed Second Sight access to the Dawn of the Dead negative elements for the first time. You know, he's been sitting on them. He wouldn't let anybody near them. And Second Sight, it comes out in maybe a month. Comes out in a month. The ultimate Dawn of the Dead box set. I mean, if you're a physical media fan and you like genre material, I mean, they announced Lord of the Rings in 4K. They've gone back and truly remastered the films in 4K. Dawn of the Dead was remastered in 4K for the first time. We live in wondrous times, my friends. Wondrous times. But for my money, I think the best werewolf movie is Ridley Scott's Alien. Come on, dude. You could make that movie with a blue-collar cargo freighter crew on Earth stumbling across an SOS on some abandoned island near Baffin Bay and tell more or less the same story with a werewolf. Some of the freakier qualities of it being an alien would go sure, but I think some of the groundedness of being quote-unquote real world could add more heightened sense of terror. I agree, but, you know, a xenomorph does not transform. Well, I guess it does. That isn't true. I guess in its life cycle, it does transform. I stand corrected. But it's not a werewolf. You have to have the moral ambiguity. I mean, you're a man, you're a moral man or a moral woman, and you have to kill when the moon is full. I mean, that's a bummer. And what are you going to do? And I think that is the key of making a great werewolf movie. And by the way, I've banged on about this book, but if you want to read one of the great werewolf novels, read Glenn Duncan's The Last Werewolf. There's now 3 books in that series, but I think Ridley Scott's company, Scott Free, owns the rights to make that movie. I think the Pierce brothers should look into directing that film because it's right up their alley. They should call Ridley Scott's company and go, brah, we got to take, have you seen The Wretched? We have to make The Last Werewolf, and we want to make all 3, and why not shoot them all 3 at the same time like Lord of the Rings and amortize the costs? Same crew, same DP, we don't have to start and stop. And then you got 3 movies in this pandemic time. Isn't that better? And we're going to shoot all over Europe where they've got a better chance of getting it all done. So there you go, boys. I've given you your new movie. Call Scott Free, have your agents call him up. The Last Werewolf is where it's at. Let me continue on. Then to follow up one last bit, when I went about my original big Universal horror binge some years back, What occurred to me was that they were contemporary. It's true. Larry Talbot rode up to his dad's rural estate in a roadster. He'd left Wales to be an actor in America and was, of course, not just cast off from his pack and his natural territory, but a womanizer and a rogue and a sneaky wannabe alpha male, a rampaging id. The main character in The Last Werewolf is exactly the same. He's like, and he's unrepentant. He likes to kill and he likes sex and he likes to drink. Great character. And there was only 30 years between Bram Stoker writing Dracula and the first film adaptation of it. I thought making Benicio del Toro's Wolfman a period piece was both prohibitively expensive, but also seemed like a surefire way to strip the horror right out of it and just make it a story about an old-timey times and stoic Victorian men. You could make a low-budget Wolfman set right now in some small woodsy town anywhere in the U.S., or perhaps a lake community, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, or Britain with minimal changes. The important part being good acting, grounded performances, grounded settings, grounded yet artful framing, and a really fucking good werewolf costume and a blood and guts FX guy. There's a lot of fiction that was contemporary when written that still feels contemporary when I read it, but it always gets adapted into a bloaty, glossy affair period piece. The Great Gatsby was a big, expensive, overly filmy affair. When I read the book, it felt like something that could happen with me and my friends, which is why the Redford version is still the superior one. It feels like Shakespeare is the only stuff that anyone recognizes, connects better with a contemporary crowd if it's set contemporarily, and that's probably just because turn-of-the-century period dress and sets are expensive, but are chump change compared to trying to do period pieces set prior to 1595. Hey, man, I agree. Well, I want to thank you, Keith Jones, for your werewolf obsession. I think werewolves are great. I think werewolves are great because they're unrepentant sensualists. I mean, they're all about devouring things, whether it's people, whether it's the opposite sex, maybe the same sex. I don't know. It depends what kind of a movie you're going to make. I would watch them all. I love werewolves. The thing is, though, the key to a werewolf film, for anybody making werewolf movies now, I cannot stand computer transformations. CG, if you want to look at American Werewolf and then look in London, then look at an American Werewolf in Paris. One of the problems with CG being employed with werewolf transformations is that you need to see flesh tearing and bones protruding, and you need to see the physicality of it. CGI doesn't work. Like the transformation in Species, when Syl transforms, when Natasha Hestron transforms in that movie, it looks like it's laid on top of her. You don't get any sense that there is tearing flesh or bones moving around, and that's no fun. I like to see flesh tearing. I like to see David McNaughton's hands extend in American Werewolf, or a snout come out like in the Howling. You got to see that shit. That's one of the reasons I like The Wretched. Because The Wretched has, I think, a combination. I don't quite know yet. We're going to find out. But I think there's a lot of practical with maybe a little... I love spines cracking, and we get a lot of... We're going to find out all about that. Let's see if I can bring on our guests. We had one guest. It looks like we have two guests now. And I have to figure out why. I can see them. But I'm going to bring them on and make sure that I can... connect. Let's see if I can connect now. I'm going to try and do it again and then bring you guys on and make sure it all works. And I'm going to just inset them because now I have to readjust the frame so I can see both gentlemen here, which is amazing. I've got, this film was co-directed by brothers, the Pierce brothers, and one of them, which I didn't remember this, but Brett told me, well, we'll get into that too, but we will see. I just need to figure out how I can get your sound in here, guys, so I can bring you on. Yeah, we'll do that. Let's see. I'm going to bring you on anyway so people can see you, and then now they can see you. Hello. Wait, can you talk?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay, talk again.
Brett and Drew Pierce here.
I think you're on. Can you guys?
Great. Cool.
I think you can hear me. Can I? I have to wonder. Let me ask the chat and make sure. Hey guys, can you hear them? If you speak.
Hello guys, can you hear us? Okay.
It takes a while. It'll.
Yeah,
We have to wait to see.
to
So anybody in the chat, can you hear them? Anyone? Hey, Kaz Graphics is a Post-Geek Singularity member. Hello, Kaz. We have a cheesemonger on this channel.
Oh, nice. Fantastic.
Oh, we can hear. Okay, good.
Oh,
They
great.
can.
Cool.
They can hear. Wow. See, that worked great. So first of all, I want to give a great Post-Geek Singularity, an imagination connoisseur welcome to the Pierce brothers. Why don't you introduce yourselves?
We're clones. No, but I'm Brett. This is my brother Drew.
And Drew Pierce.
And we're the.
Oh, I know Drew.
Yes, you do know Drew. When he was a punk PA in the office. No.
Yeah, what?
So Drew, first of all, this is such a funny story. When Brett contacted me, when he brought you up, I was like, oh my God, it freaked me out. So how did you come? Let me ask you this: how did you come to work on what you worked on?
I mean, it's probably over 10 years ago, but I was in LA, like struggling, trying to just jump in from PA job to PA job on productions. And I got my buddy Brian was coordinator on Free Enterprise 2.
So
And,
sad.
well, yeah. Bring up a sore subject. But yeah, he brought me on, and I think it was basically me and Brian for like the first week. We set up the offices, and then Darren came on board, who was like the producer, and we set up the offices. Then I met you, and I think Mark. Is it
Mark Altman.
Mark?
Yeah, we're at LA Center Studios. We were filming. They were filming Mad Men there. It was a great time to be at LA Center.
Yeah, I kept seeing the productions. It was exciting, because I was kind of newer to LA at the time, and I was always walking around like them shooting sequences of Mad Men, and going in the office and setting up. And I was basically just picking up lunch, and I was kind of like the main head PA, like the first PA. And I just remember I was only like a couple of weeks, but I was there for the first couple of weeks, and I think I had like mentioned to one of you guys or Darren or something that I like wanted to storyboard because I went to school for animation. Like flash forward, I've been working in animation storyboarding for like 10 years on features and stuff. But at the time, I hadn't done really much of anything. I was like green. I had done a little bit. And you guys, I think, were kind of like, hey, maybe we'll get him to storyboard a little bit of this movie. Like we're still putting this together. And I remember there's this moment where a kid walked into the office, this like younger kid. And he was, I think it was the kid that storyboarded, somebody told me it was the kid that storyboarded Lord of the Rings. He was like Peter Jackson's, I don't know. But apparently he like interviewed with you guys. And I was just like, oh man, I want to get a storyboarding gig. And then, shortly thereafter, and I was like, oh God, this guy's got so much experience. I hope they'll use me. But I think shortly thereafter, like the whole production fell apart. And kind of disbanded. But.
In a day. We were 3 days away from shoot. It was one of the worst experiences of my entire life. But be that as it may, I want to talk about one of what I think should be one of the best experiences of your lives. First of all, we hear a little bit about your past. What about you, Brett? And did the two of you, when you guys were growing up, was it a dream of yours to always make films?
Yeah, I mean, we had a really unique childhood in a weird way. We grew up in Detroit, in Michigan, and our dad initially wanted to be a special effects artist. He was just obsessed with stop motion animation. That was his thing. So I remember being a kid and he was like, I want to do a stop motion Hulk versus the Thing fight. That was like his dream. Like he was going to make the big Marvel movie where the Hulk and Thing fought in stop motion animation. So I loved him for that. But when we were really little, he had met Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and all these guys. And this was right before they were going to make Evil Dead, and they brought my dad on to do the stop motion effects with this other effects artist, Tom Sullivan. So basically the big finale, Evil Dead, where there's this big meltdown sequence, that's my dad and Tom's work in Evil Dead. So they like took over the basement for like a summer, and Sam and those guys would come over and eat all my mom's food and kind of half destroy the house. And they just spend all night like finishing Evil Dead in the basement. And Drew and I just kind of were like, oh, that's how you make a movie. Like, you get your friends to come over.
Yeah.
Take over your mom's house and you just make stuff. So that, like, just put it in our head. Like, that's how you put movies together. So we always wanted to after that. But then we just had a dad that was, like, a constant lover of film. Like, his job, when he got a real job finally, he was a banker when he was working on Evil Dead. Like, he was working days, bank teller, and at night coming home and working on Evil Dead. But then he got a real job. He got hired at CBS Fox. Do you remember them? You ever heard of them? It's a video company, like a VHS company.
Yeah, it's CBS Fox Home Video. Yeah. I mean,
that
was 20th Century Fox Home Video.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Yeah, they were weirdly based in Michigan. So my dad got a job there doing transfers.
So we had a cupboard
Yeah.
full of every release from CBS Fox. So we had all like the Star Wars movies before anybody else could watch them in our VHS player, you know, which was like the coveted VHS player at the time nobody had.
Yeah, because you couldn't get Star Wars was a rental only title at first.
Yeah.
So to be able to get that, and CBS Fox was, I mean, they had the Fox library. It was incredible. That was actually one of the first. CBS Fox was the first pre-recorded, the first studio to ever license their films out was Fox. They released 50 titles to Magnetic Video.
Yeah.
And a guy named Andre Blay, who wound up producing like John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. Mm-hmm. He had the brilliant idea back in the later 70s. He's like, I would like to license 50 of your movies. He said that to Fox, and they're like, why?
Yeah.
Well, I think I want to put them out. Cut to 20th Century Fox Home Video had to buy their own movies back from Andre Blay, who became the head of Fox, and then it became CBS Fox Home Entertainment.
Wow, that's an amazing ploy and perfect.
I know, right?
For him, man. Yeah, but I mean, so we just watched movies constantly with him, and he took us to the movies every weekend, and him and his buddies were always still trying to make horror films. And I mean, it built it into us. And eventually, like, Dad got a job at 20th Century Fox out here working on laser discs, and we would spend summers with him, and he'd be working on, like, I mean, you probably remember these, like, he produced the special edition Alien and Aliens laserdisc box sets,
let me just say that those boxes. When I was a laserdisc retailer in the 80s.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I was the manager and buyer of a 3-store chain in Seattle called Silver Platters. I was called Laser Bob. I mean, I was an insane laserdisc, aficionado. But those also Cameron's The Abyss came out in that same box format. So Aliens, and The Abyss, those Cameron discs really set the tone, even more so than Criterion, for the later DVD and then Blu-ray releases. Those were so definitive at the time.
Yeah,
he did like the Sound of Music, and,
Yep.
and he did a couple. Like we got to have dinner with Bob Wise when we were like kids, you know, coming out here. So we were just enamored with.
Were you guys here in the late 80s when Fox was doing laserdiscs for like Die Hard, when they switched over to, they started doing letterbox stuff, or was it more 90s?
We were more 90s just because of our age. We were kind of, I mean, we were the weird kids that, like, we visited Dad, and we were such film aficionados that we made him buy us a laserdisc player. So we're back home in Michigan in our tiny bedroom, like near Detroit, making our friends watch laserdiscs on our like 24-inch TV.
Explaining what letterbox is to them all.
Yeah, and having to explain why that was important. Well, I mean, obviously that paid off. Did you guys go to film school? Did you what were your educational backgrounds? And let's start. Did you make films yourself? Did you finally pick up whether it was Super 8 or video cameras and start shooting?
Yeah, we had this. Well, it was cool because in high school we had like the TV class, and we all just stole the cameras from school, and we just go shoot stuff on weekends and cut stuff. And we kind of had that's like the Tarantino days. Everybody was hopped up and excited about like Robert Rodriguez. So we had this core group of a bunch of friends that were just shooting things too. So we'd work on their movies, they'd work on our movies. And every summer we'd try and make like an indie, no budget movie. Like we made a really bad, like, girls in their underwear and people in the woods sort of like cabin movie, Like,
sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I'd watch that.
But then, I think this is what a lot of people run into is we both were like, well, we'll go to film school and we'll learn the practice. And I went to art school and was trying the film track, and you realize like, oh, in film school, people just watch movies and then talk about them. And we're like, we're making movies all the time. So I kind of switched my track towards animation.
Right.
And kind of went that direction. Brett was in like a screenwriting sort of track at like Wayne State in Michigan. And we kind of got towards the end of that. And our plan was always to kind of move out to California. And then this guy just halted it. He had cancer. He got Hodgkin's lymphoma. His neck blew up.
Yeah.
When we were probably like 19, 20.
Well, that's inconvenient.
Yeah.
And we had these big plans, and he went through chemotherapy, got better and got cleared, and like it was sort of the motivation we needed in a weird way to like kick our butts and into gear to move out to LA. It was kind of like, you got to chase your dream. If you could die tomorrow, it's sort of this engine.
So we like moved to LA, basically got no paying jobs as PAs on stuff all the time. Like I worked on like the first Hostel for like no money for like 6 months and all this other stuff. And we were out here a couple of years and we got slightly better jobs. Drew started animating for Futurama, and I was over at Family Guy and American Dad, kind of started as a PA but moved into animatics. And we kind of looked at each other and we're like, oh man, you know what? I've actually paid off some debt and I'm not like, worried about paying for my apartment next month because our jobs are kind of decent.
Right.
We're kind of like, we're not making any movies. We're just working on other people's stuff. This is terrible. So we upped and quit our jobs and raised like $200,000 and went back to Michigan for 6 months and shot this like zombie comedy called Deadheads over like a summer with all our buddies. And it was great. It was a big mess and a learning experience. We took over my mom's house and removed everything out of it and made it the production office. We had so many crew and cast staying just in my mom's house that we had tents in the backyard. And we just finished this goofy zombie comedy, but then we took it to fests and we ended up having this great run like at Fright Fest and the Newport Beach Film Festival, and then it just went well.
We were in this era of like, torture porn was like the rage, like at that moment, because it's post-Hostel blowing up, and we went to all these film festivals with this like lighthearted buddy zombie comedy,
right.
And we were nervous about it. But to be honest, I think everybody responded really well to it because it was so different. Everything was so dark, like it was like Hostel times 12. Everything else, and our movie came in as this like sweet sort of romantic bromance zombie movie. So yeah, it went really well for us. We sold it and kind of learned a lot.
Yeah.
But we were kind of back at ground zero and broke because we took out student loans to pay for it. We paid with credit cards. We convinced friends and people to give us like 10 grand, 20 grand here and there.
I think literally we hit Netflix and we were just kind of like, I don't know how we're paying rent next month and I'm $10,000 in debt again,
Well, people don't understand. Like they think that you make a movie and if it comes out or if it sells to Netflix or something that, you're rich.
Yeah.
And that of course isn't the case. I'm still waiting for that to happen actually.
Maybe so are we.
One day. Well, so obviously it's in your blood. You guys are lifers as far as filmmaking, and I definitely certainly know that. I mean, I despite all the setbacks I've had, you push forward. Now, one of the things that obviously there's been a huge resurgence in horror for a number of reasons. I think Blumhouse, what's been interesting is their model of their $5 million movies that if they're good enough, they get theatrical releases through Universal. But I think starting with the Paranormal Activity movies, they proved the viability of low-budget horror in theaters because horror had kind of gone away, unless it was big budget. Low-budget horror, I mean, we grew up watching, obviously, low-budget horror, and, you'd make a $300,000 movie like Halloween. Yeah, you had Dean Cundy shooting it, but it was still slick enough that it would come out. And I grew up watching, we're doing on another show on this channel where my girlfriend and I are watching all these old films I grew up watching, going to the theater to see, Avco Embassy, whether it was The Fog or Phantasm. But what I've seen in what I love, because horror is one of my favorite genres, to see low-budget horror that is so slickly made and people that really know what they're doing is great to see. And then also the different genres. I mean, there's so many ghost stories now, but I really like this sort of the old legends, the backwoods legends, the witches that actually are now in modern settings. It's kind of what Stephen King did when he made Carrie, that the crazy girl down the lane is really psychic and she's going to kill everybody at the prom. And one of the things that I really love about The Wretched is the fact that you combine classical, almost Grimm's fairy tale like horror. You've got a great witch character, but a very contemporary setting with teenagers that have estranged parents, and you've even got the resort summer community. So it's not Camp Crystal Lake, but it's it's a vacation community, and you combine these things, which is not easy to do. There's tonal shifts in there, but you really do a fantastic job of it reminded me of a horror novel that I really would like, and then it gets adapted because it had so many different layers. How did you first come up with the idea, and what were some of the things that influenced the movie?
I think there was a lot of things. We were kind of running towards a couple things. One was that we we always felt like witches were never that scary. And if they were in a movie and they were cool, they're usually like ghost stories. But we always thought, like, I think in our heads, what's the creature witch movie? And we were just really inspired and excited. Brett's a big Hellboy nut. So there were a bunch of witches that we just thought were really interesting and unique. But I think you kind of mentioned it in the way you're kind of talking about it, is that there were also a lot of things we were leaning away from. One was that we felt like the Blumhouse model, as much as we love a lot of those movies, everything had become a ghost story or a contained like thriller woman in a house movie. It was kind of like these couple sort of golden genres, and we loved creature features when we were kids. Like, so a lot of our favorite movies were creature features, and they just weren't making them. So it was that, and then I think the third thing was, like, as far as location, everything was always about like, how do we just keep people in the house the entire movie? And we were like, we want to open it up, and we're from Michigan. We shot it in northern Michigan. We really wanted an idyllic, beautiful location so that you feel comfortable. Like Poltergeist and Halloween are some of our favorites, but you feel comfortable in those spaces. I want to live in even the world of Halloween. Like, I want to be in that neighborhood. And like same with Poltergeist. Like, I kind of like the family, and you feel all warm and fuzzy and start to like people. They're kind of playful and fun. And we kind of, so I think some of it was us leaning away from the things that we just felt like have been way overdone, where you like get into a movie and it's just dripping with creep from like the first frame. And we're like, let's try and make people feel like comfortable here. Like they want to go on vacation here.
Yeah. I think it was like a little bit of us, as Drew and I just kind of missed, like we love, what they call elevated horror, which I almost hate that term, but I love a lot of elevated horror movies. But we were just like, I want to do a roller coaster fun horror movie. It still can be scary, and it can still have like super dark moments, but like tonally we were kind of like, we can play still. We can play with audience expectations. We can have a little comedy. We can have a little romance and all these other things. But as long as we kind of like make like a rabbit hole that just kind of keeps getting a little darker over time, it'll still be a horror movie. So we were, I think we were really dead set on that, because we just kind of felt like Drew was saying, like we were getting a lot of the same types of horror movies again. Some of them I love, but we were just like anxious for like a creature feature or something that just felt, even something that was geared more towards teenagers, because they used to make a lot of films for teenagers before, but it's definitely shifted more towards the adult range of stuff. So we just felt like it was a good spot to hit because nobody was doing it at the time.
Well, I love the fact it's rather unflinching. I mean, you straight up murder two girls in the opening scene of the movie, and one of them is a little girl, and her throat torn out or whatever, food for the witch, and then the teenage you kill a babysitter too, and I was like, this is my kind of movie, and
that's great,
because like you said, elevated horror, but real. What I don't like. I mean, I like comedic horror, like whether it's Shaun of the Dead or whether it's, Return of the Living Dead or even Scream. But those films also work as legitimate horror films.
Yeah.
And I thought that even though, you've got teen romance happening and you've got estranged parents and things like that, it's still, the horror was never undercut. And even though there was in a way there was a sweetness to it. There was, because your main character is very likable, and yet you didn't. I mean, you got the hot rock and roll mom, and you're like, let's kill her too, and it's like, I thought, oh, she's going to be our final mom. Nope.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great. And once you do that in your film, all bets are off. Nobody's safe. And I think that's something that is unique. But how did you come to write the film? And if you could tell us about your process together. Obviously, you co-directed this film. The writing process and coming up with the story. How do you guys work together?
Well, it's usually, I mean, in this case, the way it just kind of worked is I had been reading about a witch called Black Annie, or Black Annis, that I thought was really, it was basically a witch that lives in a tree and steals children, and people frighten their kids with that idea. And I just loved that idea. And I went to Drew and I'm like, I want to make a movie about this witch. I think it's cool, and it's got this fairy tale vibe. And usually what happens for Drew and I is we spend roughly like 2 weeks trying to like hash out and plot out a script. We just kind of like bury ourselves and try to plot it out. And then usually I run away for like 3 to 4 weeks and write a first draft, like a vomit draft that is usually pretty terrible, kind of type thing. So I do a vomit draft and come back to it with Drew. It's usually got like, maybe a quarter of the things in it are pretty cool. But then we usually replot one more time. And then after that, it's just trade back and forth. It's like, okay, we replotted. I'll do a quick rewrite in like a week. I'll give it to Drew. Drew will do his rewrite, and we just go back and forth. But honestly, that's just always the way it's been. But I mean, the thing is, everyone's like, "Oh, it must have been done when you were ready to shoot." I mean, we were rewriting the day before we shot stuff all the time.
Of course.
Yeah. It's always about just plussing stuff.
Yeah.
And this script, it obviously came out of like the Black Annie thing. We found this other creature that we were kind of combining. We were like, that's such an interesting sort of like folklore sort of story. But where the plot comes from, ironically, we had a werewolf script we had written before that was kind of a voyeuristic werewolf next door.
Yeah.
And we wrote the entire script. So a lot of the beats that we actually transposed into the Wretched were just kind of about, we've since then, they were from this original werewolf script called Never Cry Wolf back in the day. We shot a trailer when we were like probably 17 or 18. But we've ripped out, speaking, you guys were talking about werewolves for a while. We ripped out a lot of the ideas that we loved for the werewolf movie, and that's the other project that we've been sort of working on, because we sort of hijacked and sort of, ripped those things away. So I think you always have these ideas and things that you just want to see in a movie, and we tend to cannibalize them and sort of like,
Sure.
They put this there.
Yeah.
We still do that.
Yeah. In fact, even the witch like causing things to wilt when she's nearby is from a script we wrote a long time ago called Dorks and Dice, which was about like basically kids playing D&D and the fantasy world invades reality, and they go on a quest to find Gary Gygax.
It was basically a more extreme Stranger Things, if you can imagine.
Right.
Like the fantasy characters start, Gary Gygax is like.
But there was an evil wizard that walked around, and whatever he touched or was nearby, flowers would wilt. And we just love that idea, so it just
since you brought that up, I thought the most impressive effects in the film, and I was curious how you did it, is when you see the footsteps go up the stairs and you see the flowers in the foreground wilt. Was that a combination of practical and CG?
Oh, it's all practical.
It's a composite.
Yeah,
that's
it's
basically
just
the
a
one
composite.
effect we had. Our father, Pierce, he was our wilt pro. We basically set him to, usually he's our glorified PA and he's the biggest cheerleader. He like brings us coffee and loves being on set. We make him pick up our actors. He's the best.
Yeah.
But the one thing we sort of tasked him with is like, Dad, you got to figure out how to kill flowers as fast as possible. We can't wait 5 days. We can't time lapse that. We need to be able to kill them in like 4 hours. So it's like drying them out and poisoning them. So we basically shot, it was the last shot of the entire movie of principal photography. We basically shot a time lapse of that wilting and just took note of how it was lit and all that. And then we shot a plate of her walking up the stairs separately.
Like weeks before, yeah.
See, again, it was because it looked practical to me, but I was like, wow, how did they do that?
Yeah.
Well, so once you had the script, how long was the process of, I know you kept rewriting, but when did you have a script that you you thought was okay to show to people?
I think it was probably like, we shot in 2018. So I think we had a script we were happy with in like 2015, actually. And
wow.
Yeah. And we felt good about it. And we actually got an agent out of it for the first time in our lives. But that didn't really make anything happen. Drew and I found these two production companies that kind of tried to cast it up and get it made, but it just didn't. We were kind of wallowing with them for like 2 years, and the option was running out, and we just didn't, we didn't feel like they were going to make it anyways, and they wanted to re-up the option. So we, in desperation, had been spending time trying to find people to finance it anyways.
Yeah.
And we found some people, and we basically took their budget, which was way higher than what we made it for, the company that was trying to get made. And Drew and I just said, hey, let's buckle down and let's just chop the crap out of this. Like, take everything, all the guts out of it, and make it as cheap as we could possibly make this movie for. And we did that, and we sent it to these people that we had already been talking to. We said, we can do it next spring for this much money. We have these people. We can make this happen for this reason. And like a week later, they called back and said, yes.
Felt like a miracle.
Yeah, it felt like a miracle.
And I always feel like the one thing that I think really launched it to that next point too is we made a really fancy lookbook. I mean, this is just because I know a lot of people are always wondering, you have this script. Who's going to read your script? The truth is, people don't read scripts in Hollywood. Like, it's pretty hard to get people to read scripts.
Yeah, nobody does anymore.
No.
They'll look at a lookbook, though.
Yeah,
pictures are nice.
They'll look at a lookbook, and if they see something that just catches their interest and is awesome, like if you can make a lookbook look like it belongs in like a bookstore and it looks amazing and blows people away, you can share that as a PDF. It's easier to find investors. It's easier to get people excited about your idea. Even the crew, the whole way through, it actually helps everything, every part of the process. And we also did a sizzle reel. I don't think that one necessarily helped our project get made. We showed it to people, and it was cool. That was a long process, but basically creating these other materials, everything you can do to take away the worries of the people that are going to give you money.
Yeah.
Or production.
We had
companies.
a little ace in the hole too, because Drew is a character designer. So like Drew designed the look of the witch, and there was a lot of artwork of the witch in the book. So it was really easy to kind of be like, well, guess what? He knows how to make it look like the witch we want it to look like.
My storyboards for the movie, it's funny. They're like stick figures, because that's all you need really when you're a director. And they're like the ugliest storyboards. But for the lookbook, we did like really slick looking storyboards for one of the horror sequences. And you're just trying to show off as much as possible, you know?
Yeah. Well, it also proves that you have, a vision. Everybody now wants to, because nobody else does. The gatekeepers don't know. So you have to show them. I mean, it's amazing to me how many people you talk to in the industry and they're like, no, I get it. But they don't. They don't. And you have to show them nowadays you have to show them almost the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's like, here it is, so there's no doubt in their minds. Because nobody has imagination anymore. Nobody can look at a page and be like, I mean, 30 years ago when I was a reader, people had more imagination and they didn't have imagination then.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's tougher. So you had the money in place. Was your money contingent on your cast?
No, we got really lucky where we had people that were investing in us that just believed in us, which is like, we realized now after the fact, we had like unicorns that were like investing in our movie. It never happens. And
I know.
They thoroughly believed in us, and they just like trusted us all the way. And we did try to get bigger cast members just to like try, like ones we wanted that would help the movie along its way. But, we made a movie about two teenage leads, and there's not a lot of like teenagers that really
move the needle,
anchor a movie or move. Yeah. Like
it was kind of a learning experience for us in a way, is because we wrote a script that we were really proud of, but we also didn't write a script that necessarily is like castable as far as like a cast member that would help finance a movie.
Yeah.
So in the studio system, it would almost never make sense unless we got like Haley Steinfeld or something. Like every other character, we had like we have a dad and we have the woman next door and these different characters, but they're kind of not big enough parts, or they don't like have a massive sort of thing that like basically the only person that would move the needle is probably the main
kid. But we just kind of and we were weird because like even we went through the casting process with a casting director, and we had some names come in and read that like a lot of people would have told us like you should cast that person because they will help get your movie sold.
Right.
And we were kind of like, they weren't bad, but they weren't really good for this particular part. And we had people that we just thought were really good for the part, so we just trusted our gut and went with the people that we liked the best for the part.
A lot of TV actors you might recognize and things that we had auditioned, but it wasn't enough to like make us just cast them because we know who they are.
Yeah. I loved the cast of this movie. I thought it was cast extraordinarily well, and what I really loved about it was, everybody obviously was attractive, but not too attractive.
Yeah.
It felt more like a John Hughes movie to me that I believed. I'm always banging on about verisimilitude on this show, where you're creating a reality within the proscenium of your frame. And one of the things that I really loved about your movie is you believe it. It's not even overlit. Like, I really believed what I was watching was happening. And I think because so often you're watching these things and then I want to love movies, especially horror films, especially low-budget horror movies, but I think that there's been something lost, and I really liked the fact that I believed your movie. Like, I never got into when you go into the cellar or something in your movie, there's not like the Adam Greenberg blue light that was from Near Dark or something, where, the nighttime look where it's like, ooh, it looks cool, but it's like no cellar or no... If you went inside the trunk of a tree where a witch lives, it wouldn't be lit like that. It might, and you guys never broke that wall of verisimilitude that I like so much.
Yeah, thanks
a lot.
I mean, a lot of credit goes to our DP. It was the first movie he ever shot, and we basically watched Halloween a lot, the original Halloween, because we loved the nighttime stuff there. We loved the interiors in Halloween, which is weird. We were just like, these interiors are great. They feel real. So the speech was always like, I just want it to feel like a real place. Yeah, I can get a little moodier at night, and I want things to drop off so they're not seen, so people are worried about the corners. But I want it to feel like a real place, not overly overly genre. Like,
and everything you mentioned, the thing is, it's very satisfying to hear, because that was in our lookbook. Like the description of not movie star attractive and, you know, grounded sort of locations that feel like you're actually in a place. That was part of the lookbook. You know, that's like the location section and the casting section, you know. Like that's sort of what we sort of were responding to.
Well, I really loved the whole. Was that place? Was that that? I mean, the lake. Did you guys go there as kids? I mean, it was.
Well, here's the thing. Drew's in-laws live in that town, so Drew spends summers up there. And we had earlier drafts of the script where like the dad was a sheriff, but that felt kind of like I've seen the dad as the sheriff.
Yeah, we have this phrase we say, you know, whenever we're like pitching stories back and forth and we're going through the what if thing, we have this thing like that feels like because movie. Like, he's a sheriff because movie.
Yeah,
right.
So we're always But Drew was up there and he calls me and he's like, "Hey, my in-laws, they teach sailing at this marina and it's beautiful, man." And he's like, and Drew's like, "I think the dad should run a marina." And I'm like, "All right, man, let's rewrite it." So he runs this beautiful. And Drew sent me pictures, and he was like, the basically the office is at the end of the dock, so it's just super beautiful and unique. And he's like, I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna rewrite it that way." So we rewrote it to be that way, and then even for the locations, we just flew back there early, just Drew and I, and drove up every road of this peninsula in northern Michigan, looking for those houses. Those are randomly houses we found that happened to be a bed and breakfast, but like we checked those out. And we were like, "Oh, this is really cool." And then we realized there was a barn in the backyard. And we went in the barn, and it just looked like somebody had come in there and set the place already. It was amazing looking. We didn't even have a barn in our script. Like the finale didn't happen in this barn. And we were just like, let's go home and rewrite the script. So like instead of this stuff happening in the house, it's going to happen out in this really creepy barn. So it was just, you know, it's a mixed bag of like, you have what you're working with, but you got to kind of keep it like clay all the time because like, oh, that's an advantage. Let's figure out how to like scoot that in, you know? So it's like.
Well, again, it's production value. It just, it looks more expensive and lush and it's more visually interesting. I mean, I love that marina, that location you guys shot at. And it was really unique. I mean, like when you shot on the train, you know, did you have to like permit that or did you just go on and when the train was running?
The bus? We just rented a bus.
Oh, the bus. You just rented a bus. Okay.
Yeah, we rented a bus, and that was like weirdly like one of the most nightmare shoots ever. Which sounds stupid. We did so much more stuff in that, but we were on a constant loop, and like we're usually by a bunch of woods. So like you're getting shadows of trees hitting everybody, but then all of a sudden you're not getting any. It's bright light.
So it's exposure. It's just completely pitch black.
It was a total nightmare,
and then all of a sudden it's like overblown.
Yeah. And we just had this older woman in a bit part who was really, really sweet and wonderful. But we were told before she showed up, it was like one of the things we kept on going, like, we just need a really good old lady for this part to our producers. And our producer goes like, "Yeah, I got her. She does theater. She's amazing. She's done a bunch of stuff." We're like, and showed us a picture. We're like, "Great." And then she shows up and talks to us. She'd never done anything, ever, acting or been on camera. So on top of the shifting light, she just kept on looking at camera all the time whenever we were shooting. So it's just this weird, like, everyone's always like, "What was your worst shoot?" And we're like, "That bus."
It was such you come up to the moment where you have bright light and you're like, "Okay, roll camera and say your line." You know, you just like action, just keep going with your line. Let's do it again. And every time she looks at camera and then it's like dark again. And you're like, "Okay, here comes another bright spot." And it was just this nightmare. Nightmare directors.
Reminds me of hell.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing you guys did, I mean, in addition, you've got great practical creature effects. And I loved, and you're not shy about them either. Like you don't, it's not a mystery that there's a creature in this movie and you get to see hands and the reveals are great. And how did you find the creature effects and did you know what they were going to be? And well, obviously you had your lookbook, so you know how they wanted to look, but did you audition? Well, where'd they all come from? How did you get your creature effects team?
We had basically we were reaching out to people about who would be a good effects team for this. And, you know, we went to some you talk to some big effects houses and you realize like they got too much overhead. They have these giant places. They're never going to be able to do our movie because we're going to go broke just them doing our movie. But our producer, Chang Sang, recommended somebody he'd worked with. They had made a movie called Laid to Rest years and years ago.
Yeah.
Chrome skull kind of type thing. And really nice effects work in this. And this wasn't the main guy that did it, but kind of like his understudy, but had now become the main guy. So it was this guy, Eric Porn. That's his real name. And we went and met with Eric, and he was just awesome and great. His work was amazing. He had kind of a small shop, so we also knew, like, we can make this work money-wise. And Drew and I had spent time storyboarding every effect sequence, like really, really extensively, and he loved it because he looked at it and he's like, "Oh, thank you guys, because I'm so tired of showing up on set and they promised me we're only going to look at it from this way, and then they shoot it from other directions and it looks terrible." And so we kind of had this great working relationship with him, and he worked really closely with Drew and I, where like he was doing the molds for the creature and figuring out the way she looked based on Drew's drawings, and he would send us like pictures of the sculpt while we were in Michigan, kind of getting
We'd
the
see
movie
the
ready.
face or the chest
Yeah.
or like any sort of piece of the spine, and he'd send it. And then I have there's some teaks in the background here that I draw on. Is basically he'd send it to us, and we just draw over the pictures of his sculpt and be like, "What about this?" Or maybe make her a little more feminine, or what if we add a little texture here?
Yeah.
It just kind of like it was a cool collaborative process to kind of like design in real time and help.
Yeah.
them.
Well,
So,
I think, I mean, you guys really nailed it. That was one of the great joys of this film. Was the actual how effective the creature effects were. There's never again. I think a lot of because I worked in makeup effects. I worked on like Army of Darkness and
cool.
things like that. So the key, of course, to great effects when you're using prosthetics is lighting. If a lot of people don't. One of the great Pumpkinhead. Stan Winston directed Pumpkinhead, and one of the great things about Pumpkinhead is the Pumpkinhead creature looks so great because Stan Winston knew how to light his own creations.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, that's when creature effects fall down, is when you don't have synergy between the creature effects team and the director and the cinematographers, or the directors in your case and the cinematographer. And I really thought that there wasn't a moment that wasn't really effective. Like the creature was absolutely convincing in every single shot. And that's a hard thing to do, especially on a budget. But that obviously now I know it comes from your pre-planning and the fact that you worked hand in hand with your effects team, so they didn't show up on set and you didn't ask them to do something that they weren't prepared to do. And a lot of people that make horror films don't understand how difficult and how incredibly important it is to plan these things out beforehand.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. There's a million things that you have to do to get a movie made. Like you have thousands of things, so those things tend to fall on the back burner, even with big movies. And that's why I think people rail against CG, because even a lot of times the CG isn't sort of planned. It's like they shoot it on the day and then they figure it out sort of later. And that's just, it's all pre-planning. You can make CG and you can make practical effects amazing, but you have to know what you're doing, weeks, if not months beforehand.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've worked on, as a documentarian, so many big films and watched how there is a lot of, even though with all the previous now, there's a lot of things that are haphazard sometimes. And when it comes to monsters, you can't do that. The more planning and the more you know what you're doing, and that comes with that kind of synergy between your camera team and you guys and your effects team. I mean, and a lot of people don't know about or how to do that, and because practical effects are sort of a lost art these days, and it's going by the wayside. It's kind of a bummer. But you guys make a great argument. Did you use any CG in the film at all?
The tiniest bit. The creature is never CG. I would say things that are CG that don't matter, that you wouldn't notice, is we remove boom shadows and stuff like that with CG.
Right.
Boring stuff. But then there's a shot where she's crouched in the shower and there's like a high shower head shooting over her back and her back looks all gross. We plussed that because the water kept washing off what we wanted to look good. So we figured out it was difficult. We had to track it underwater, and there was some reel in there to kind of try to make it work, but it never quite worked the way we wanted it to. And then in the opening scene, and this was more just our gaffe, there's a part where the mother's feeding on her child in a chair, and there's a bunch of blood on the floor. There was no blood on the floor. That's CG. We just forgot to put blood on the floor when we were shooting. It was like the dumbest thing ever. But those are kind of like the two biggest instances. But other than that, it's pretty much all practical.
Yeah, I mean, I think it felt all practical to me. And I think, when you can do that, when I produced The Hills Run Red, one of the things we did was we used CG to add more the moon in a shot or something.
Yeah.
And I think that's always the best, when you can use CG to augment and, like you say, plus your scenes. But your practical stuff, was it difficult to shoot? because there's a lot of really impressive shots.
It slows things down. It's really time consuming. It's the most fun thing ever, though. Every production person, they all show up, and all the random people that are just kicking in. Like all of a sudden, you look around, there's like 60 people around you, and you're like, "Whoa!"
It's like everybody's an immature like 8-year-old. All of a sudden,
They're so excited.
They're like, "Oh, you gotta rip this person open. Somebody's gonna climb. Oh, I want to watch." You know. So, but
and there is always a lot of even though we had planned all the shots out, there is always a lot of clunkiness because you can plan the shot, but then like, how do you actually orchestrate that? And there's a lot of like, okay, you're the creature, step back and then put your hand here and do this twist thing.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to figure out ways to make it look unnatural. So there is a lot of fidgeting and like kind of awkwardness to try and get that.
I feel like Drew and I were like the only ones that comes out of those scenes thinking the effect worked because everybody else is watching how it gets done. And they're like, they just think it looks goofy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, she's the wretch and she's hanging over this tailgate and you know the effects guys are holding her legs so she doesn't fall over and pretend she's crawling out of this deer carcass. And like we're looking at the monitor, we're like, this looks awesome. There's 2 seconds there that looks amazing,
right?
But it looks terrible right after that. You know?
Yeah, nobody will ever get that. It's so that's one of the things that the big mystery is that you realize when you're on a film set, the only person that really knows when they're looking into the monitor what's actually there is the director.
Yeah.
I mean, because everyone else doesn't quite, you know, they don't see it. They don't know. They don't even know what those 2 brief moments are. And you're like, okay, we got it.
Yeah.
And people are like, that's so goofy. And you're like, nope, just that.
Well, Drew talks about this thing. Like Drew worked on, I don't want to name the movie because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. He worked on a really big movie, and he said the director would sit in front of the monitor, and there'd be like 14 people behind him watching the monitor, like producers and everybody else. And I'm like, leave that guy alone. Just like you hired him to trust to figure out what you need to get in this shot. He doesn't need all the pressure of like 19 of you like, do you nod yes or no to something? It's just terrible.
And there's there's obviously this balance because you want like your continuity person. You want people to tell you, like there was a scene where we put it's my child in the movie, like it's my kid. Yeah. We put him in the scene and we realized in the moment he was actually supposed to be, spoiler, he was already dead
in the story.
We added him to a scene. We're like, oh no, the baby's dead. And it was like pretty bleak because it's my kid. So you want those people, but there's also this sort of element, if you have too many cooks just watching the frame and scrutinizing it, you could always find something wrong. And the truth is, nobody cares if there's a Starbucks cup in the background a lot of times. If they love the story and they're compelled, like, it doesn't really matter. And I mean, that's more extreme, but like, sometimes there's little things and it ends up just slowing down the process and kind of inhibiting either the actors or the performance or all the other things that are so crucial.
Now, what about, you cast a lot of, I thought, great people. I really liked all the, were they local hires or were you people that you brought in from LA and New York?
They were mostly LA. We had, we hired a casting director in Los Angeles and we took tape auditions. We went down to Cast, C-A-Z-T, down, just like kind of cruddy casting office, doesn't exist anymore.
Closed.
Yeah, I almost felt like people like Drew and I got there, were like, nobody's going to show up because it's a little sketchy around here, you know? But so people came down to try out for us, and we went in because Drew and I were so paranoid. Like, she was like, I can just send you tapes. We'll have people read for stuff. And Drew and I went every day for like 3 weeks straight and watched like 7 to 8 hours of auditions every day just because we were paranoid. But we just kind of flagged the people that we liked out of that and just like kept them around. But the one that was like off the bat was the one that plays the father, Jameson Jones, was a friend of ours he had been at the table read when we wanted to do a table read of it, and we just always liked him, but we felt bad because unfortunately that was one of the roles that we were like trying to cast up to a big actor to like cement the movie. So, but Drew and I deep down kind of knew like that's who we want, but we kept on trying to cast it up. And one day Drew ran into him on the street and he was like, so what's up with the movie? And Drew's like, dude, I just got to be honest with you. We want you, but we got to see if like somebody famous says yes for our producer's sake. But if they say no, it's you. so it was a weird experience.
He was good. I mean, I really, again, believable. I really liked him. I mean, I think, you know, if you had, say, one larger, more recognizable name, the balance would be not, it wouldn't. I mean, that was the thing. When we grew up, we were watching movies that, sure, you'd watch The Fog and Adrienne Barbeau would be in it, and you'd see one of John Carpenter's, you know, you'd see, and then, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis. But for the most part, I liked watching horror films. We watched Nightmare on Elm Street last night, you know, introducing Johnny Depp. Other than John Saxon and Ronnie Blakely, I mean, who knows anybody that's in that movie? No one knew who Heather Langenkamp was, you know. And so you're able to suspend your belief, you know, and I really enjoyed that. And I really liked the way the characters were written and it's just a really fun movie. So how long? So you made the film. How long did it take you to sell it? How did IFC get involved, and what was that process like?
I mean,
Did you go to festivals?
Yeah, it was. We finished shooting in 2018, May 2018, and we did the dumb thing of racing, trying to get into Sundance when it wasn't ready, and sent them like a crappy version of the movie, and then they told us no. And then we did the same kind of for South by, like the sound mix wasn't done yet, and we sent them, and they were like, we really like it, but maybe if it was a little better.
We had
they told us no.
storyboards in there.
Yeah.
You've got to reiterate. So right now on this channel, we're throwing the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival.
Yeah.
For viewers, that's happening right now. Please stress to them the importance of you only get one time to show your work.
Yeah.
And you've got to make sure that you always put your best foot forward technically. If you could talk like you just did, I guess. But
I think I think when you finish a movie, it's such a long process just to get a movie made. And then it's a long process to edit the movie. And then there's all these finishing touches that just take forever. And everybody that you gave the Braveheart speech to, then when you're going to make the movie 2 years prior, and then all the people, like, by then they're like, why is that thing not done? And you're like, because it's an unbelievable amount of work.
I know.
Yeah. and we have many friends and people we know that it took them 8 years to finish a movie, right?
Yeah.
So, but you're sort of like a year and a half, 2 years in at that point when you kind of got it at the film festival, and everybody's just like, everybody's sort of hyping like you got to submit to this film festival, and the truth is, you almost have no business submitting until almost everything's done. Like it should be like 99%.
I completely agree.
Yeah. And if you haven't done, for me, a lot of people submit it with like, unless you have like a big famous person in the movie and you really want to make your deadline at Sundance and you think you got a good shot because, Nick Cage is in your movie and, it's also got kind of a Sundance bend to it. Like, don't submit to any festival unless you feel like you have a good shot, or if you have nobody in your movie, definitely make sure that's the most polished movie ever, because you're competing, especially with most of these festivals. 70% of film festivals are usually programmed before submissions come in. Submissions can get in, but 70% of the film festivals are programmed based on the alumni, which makes sense because they've already been to the film festivals, and famous people and studios and all these other things. So you always are competing for a very narrow margin, especially if you're in like the genre department and there's like 10 genre movies they play at that film festivals, and 7 of them are already programmed, and maybe one of them's a Blumhouse movie, and there's a big premiere for this, and then there's this one
or the remake of Halloween's there, so you're not getting that spot,
Right.
So,
everybody can be bitter and show up to that film festival and be like, why is this movie with this like famous person in this film festival? It's a terrible movie, but like that helps viewership. It helps draw people to the film festival. There's a lot of things that it's not always just the best movies
for them in a way.
And it's also, the cool part about film festivals, they're trying to program things that have an agenda, not a negative agenda, like a positive, like voices that aren't heard and all those things. So it's all, you're competing against all of these sort of things. And if your movie fits into all of those buckets, it's a benefit. But if it doesn't fit into every bucket, polish it.
Oh no, I completely agree. I mean, and also you have to know your audience too. I would add to that, your film nowadays has to have sort of, I always call it has to have an element of cool. Like people have to think that, ooh, this is a new hip thing. Like if you have to have something that sets your movie apart from anything else. Like you can't make a Tarantino ripoff anymore.
No,
you can't make like 2 Days in the Valley and hope it's going to get into the film festivals. You have to set trends, not follow trends.
Yeah. You just got to make what you want to make and not worry about like what everybody's doing. Because by the time, if you try to follow some trend and you come out, somebody's already done it like 19 times in the last 2 years.
There's like 700 witch movies being made right now.
We realized we kind of like, there was The Witch, which is amazing, but like we've realized now after taking all these pitch meetings and stuff that everybody's like, we meet people that are like, I got 4 witch movies in development. I got 2. You're like, oh my God. Yeah, I'm so glad we beat this little like mountain of things that are coming. But I mean, for us, what happened is we were submitting forever and getting shut down and told, we weren't in. But we got into the Fantasia Film Festival in 2019. So we went there, and it was our first time going to Fantasia, which is an amazing festival.
Yeah, I was there in 2012. It's amazing.
Oh, it's great. And great parties, good time, fantastic movies. And we went there, and we lucked out. They gave us like a prime night, like Friday night, when there's this thing called the Frontiers Market there. And this is just, for people who are other filmmakers, you want to aim, if you're getting into Fantasia, fight to get that Frontiers Market weekend like spot, because all the people in town that you want to see your movie are in town for that weekend. So they'll hear about it, or maybe they'll come, or they'll be hype about you. So we played that Friday night, and we sold out the big house. It was like a 700-seat theater, and we had a really good response there. And then like the next day, we got a really good review out of Variety. And then CAA wanted to come on board to represent the movie for sale. You get
Of course they did.
Yes.
They showed up and
they'll
like,
package it for you.
Class.
Yeah, best in class.
We're the guys. That's pretty.
Yeah. And Drew and I, we figured that deal out with them. And then it was probably about 2 or 3 months of negotiations with various companies that were interested in picking up the movie. And IFC just ended up being the best home for it. They gave us the best deal, but they also had the best plan and attitude about what they wanted to do with it. So that was a big selling point for us.
We obviously hit up all our filmmaker friends, because we've, everybody's been screwed by, distributors. And a lot of people said that IFC is one of the most transparent as far as all the companies, and really kind of give you at least honest sort of predictions and numbers and things.
Plus, they have good taste. I mean, they tend to pick movies that are good. Their output, IFC Midnight's pretty solid in terms of what you're getting from them.
A lot of the movies we had seen on the festival that, our tour sort of are also, they were like IFC movies we loved. So we're like, oh yeah, I'm excited to be in the company of a lot of these.
Yeah. And then we worked out that deal with them, and they'd set a May 1st release date. Like, this was probably in November of 2019. So we're coming out May 1st, and then we're like, oh, awesome. So is Black Widow. Oh man, but we were gonna, we were gonna come out in like 10 or 11 theaters across the country, like what IFC always does.
And then God smited the world.
Yes.
Well, maybe the witch from your movie made sure that things came to fruition.
She cursed us all, apparently.
Now this is
great. We should have her cross out Black Widow DVD when it comes out.
Yeah.
Well, I actually covered your film earlier this year on this show, and talked about the box office and how the fifth weekend was not since Black Widow was the #1 movie 5 weekends in a row. You guys, I mean, you now have a footnote in history, in that the Wretched, in Hollywood history, when no movie theaters were open and drive-ins had been allowed to open, your film was #1 at the box office 5 weeks running. Now, having made films in your backyard and had your dad on set and finally making The Wretched, what was that like, having this kind of crazy success during the pandemic?
It was, it's obviously an elation. It was so exciting to have that happen. It was a little surreal because, just like everybody else, day to day, you're just like, what's going on with this thing? We're inside. We don't get to really celebrate that much. We got to go see it, and it was super exciting. Every week it just felt more surreal because the theaters kept doubling, and the audience kept growing. You're seeing a ton of attention online, and we did an interview on Good Morning America, and all these things. They got reviewed in all the biggest papers, and it just got kind of got insane. We just never expected it, especially any indie movie that doesn't have any kind of marketing budget, really, for all intents and purposes. You're just relying on word of mouth. So we just didn't expect it. No matter what, we felt like we had a cool movie, but we were like, how is this going to
kind of the way it worked for us is probably about a month and a half, 2 months out from the movie getting released, IFC called us and just said, we talked to them. We were like, we still May 1st because now there's a pandemic. So is that just going to move? That was our assumption. It's going to move, or it's just going to come out on VOD, no theaters. And we were like, that's fine. Totally get it. And they were like, yeah, well, we're kind of seeing what's happening. There might be some drive-ins opening up. And that's what ended up happening. And we came out the first week, and we were in 10 or 12 theaters, and we just did really, really well. But we were still kind of after that first week, you're we had this really awesome 1 week thing. That's going to be our big win. This 1 week's going to be the big win. And then they doubled the theaters, which we were like, we'll do okay, but we'll probably be around another week or two. And then the next week was even bigger. And then we hit a holiday weekend, and it was huge. And that kind of was with the Good Morning America thing. And then it ended up being just 5 weeks of always getting bigger. And every week we're just call our investors and other people that worked on it. We're like, guys, this is the last week. that we're going to be doing like this well. It's going to start dropping dramatically.
It's
and
crazy.
And every week it was consistent.
And then we got to the 6th week or the 5th week, whatever it was, and we had like tied the record with Avatar. It's totally like the funniest Jeopardy question of all time.
Yeah.
Is because we're tied with like Avatar and I think The Sixth Sense for like the longest run in first place. Except for that they've all made like $2 billion something on dollars in the same amount of time. But we're totally happy.
Jeopardy question: lowest grossing #1 for 5 or 6 weeks movie of all time. That's what.
But you can't look at it that way. You gotta.
No, I know. I know.
So when you do that now, did CAA represent you to IFC? Were they still are they still repping you?
Well, they just repped the movie, which is a weird thing to get used to. That's what they
they rep them. They don't take you on as clients.
No, they just took on the movie. I mean, Drew and I have really good representation and managers now that we love, which is as per result of all this stuff.
Sure.
But it's a weird world. Like it's all these things you got to get used to that you don't really know. It was strange for us too. And then there's even that time period while you're like, are they going to ask us to go over to them, or are they just interested? It's a very
well. It also puts you in an interesting situation because if you have another movie to make, or you want to make another film, you're like, do we talk to them first?
Yes.
Or do we go are we obligated to them?
Yeah.
My answer to that is no.
Yeah.
You're not. Because they don't have your best interests at heart. They only have
all these. I mean, everybody is just waiting to pick the bones of the desperate filmmaker after they poured their soul into making a movie for 4 years.
Although in the weirdest way, I always have to, and I won't name the person specifically, but somebody at CA was kind of really great to us in one way, who was repping the film in a way, and they gave us some of the best advice. And I can't describe it. I'll tell you some other time, but they gave us some of the best advice that honestly we owe them so much for it because of the way things worked out. I would say they even pushed us towards IFC when I thought there was other options that they would have been more attracted to for maybe financial reasons.
Right.
But they pushed us that way, and Drew and I are kind of like, I'm so glad we listened to that person.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, there are good people in the business, and when you find people that are like to me, what I've never understood, the thing that is so baffling to me, having been in this business now for 31 years, is I've always thought that there should be longevity, and yet everybody treats every deal that they're making as the last deal, so they're going to get as much as they can out of it right away, and they're not looking to build relationships with people that will endure over 30, 40 years. And you look at the most successful people in Hollywood, they've all got teams they've worked with for decades.
Yeah.
It's
they rarely cycle people out. They rarely do it. Yeah.
And I've never understood this short-term thinking. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was it like now that you had the success? What did your dad think of the fact that your film was?
Well, it was. I mean, he's obviously super excited and loves being a part of everything. He's gone to a bunch of the film festivals with us. He loves shooting the shit with people at the bar and like, I'm the old Evil Dead guy. Like he always casually drops that, and they get really excited.
I mean, he's over the moon. Like, he's more proud of us than it. And our mom is too. Like, our mom was like, she never cared about box office, but like, over the course of the summer, my mom's checking Box Office Mojo every day and then calling us, so that's really funny.
Every step of the way, though, it's funny. We like to give our dad a hard time because we'd show him the rough cut, and we probably did like a good 10 screenings and got feedback. And every time we show it to our dad, he'd be like, the last cut, it just really breathed, like it was just every time he liked the previous cut better than the next cut, and we're like, Dad, and
then the movie comes out and does really good, and we're just like, "Hey, Dad, so which was the good cut? Was it?"
It's like you really landed it at the last one. Yeah,
we just give him a hard time. He's great though. He's always like, literally, he'll go to every film festival. He went to Fright Fest with us in London. He was at Fantasia, and he's part of the party.
Did you guys go to Sitges?
No, we didn't get into Sitges with this one.
What?
I know. We got into Sitges with our first movie, Deadheads.
We were honestly, that was like the one that I think we were pretty surprised by because that was like literally like a blow to the gut because we had submitted.
It's my favorite film festival in the world.
He went to the last one. I was too broke at the first time around with Deadheads. He went with zero money in the bank account, probably negative like 10 grand.
I was like coasting on debit
cards. Our first movie,
and
I was just like, I've already traveled to like 6 film festivals. I know Sitges is supposed to be amazing, but I just can't afford to keep traveling on my dime.
Yeah.
And they provided like some of the stuff and air travel, which was great.
Yeah, they give you a hotel room up the Grand Malia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
I had the best time of my life. I went there by myself, and like I get off the plane, and they gave me like $600 in coupons for like free food around town.
The Sitges Film Festival, I've been involved with it variously through the last 20 years. Angel Sala, who runs the festival, everybody at Sitges, I love that film festival. If I was rich, I would just go every year and hang out.
Oh yeah,
I'd get the hotel and the art hotel in the marina and just go to Potch every night, just hang out.
I want to go still. Brett kept pitching me like
that was almost like
Brett seemed pretty certain we were going to get in. He's like, you have to go this time.
I can't believe they wouldn't have let this movie in. That's baffling to me.
It was one of those weird ones where this is kind of like, indie filmmaker secret is like, if you're submitting to film festivals, do yourself a favor and try to submit directly to people that work at them instead of just submitting online. Sitges was a place that we had no connections to, so we just did a blind submission.
Okay.
So we probably just, fell in the normal process of things, but we, it was okay. I was so heartbroken though, because I've been wanting to take him so bad since I went, because I swear every 2 weeks a Sitges story comes up about how amazing it was, and Drew just kind of rolls his eyes like,
next movie.
Yeah.
Well, no, let me, I've been there, I think 5 times, and it's always amazing.
That's cool.
It's the best.
I mean, I once slept on the beach, woke up, and went to a screening of Battle Royale.
Oh, nice.
There's sand in my hair. I literally slept on the beach. Went to a morning screening of Battle Royale, and people were standing up and cheering during the screen. Wow. I mean, it was that kind of the audience. It's the best. It's just the best film.
Oh man!
And when I say that, it's for genre fans, science fiction,
people.
Fantasy, and horror.
Yeah.
I mean, Fantasia is a great film festival, but you're not in a city that's a small Mediterranean city that's hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Yeah, on the ocean.
It's on the Mediterranean.
Food.
The food is amazing. The people are amazing, and the nightlife, and you just never know what's going to happen to you at Sitges at any one time, and it's all good. it's all good.
Yeah,
Shout out to Gemma if she ever watches this.
We were there with Deadheads. Just to show how cool it is for genre fans. The night of our screening, they were showing our movie at 2 a.m, but it's because us and one other zombie movie, because they were doing a zombie walk.
The Jack Daniels with
it was so cool.
Wait, what year was that?
That was 2011,
dude. I was there.
Oh man,
I was there.
Oh, dude.
I was there with Femme Fatales. I was directing this.
Oh wow. I think I remember seeing you do interviews, and were you there with some of the women?
Yes, I was.
I remember.
We went with 10 very beautiful girls that we took around everywhere.
Sounds like an awful trip, Rob. I'm sorry.
I can't believe that you and I were at Sitges together. That, by the way, was an epic year at Sitges.
Oh
too.
yeah.
That for people that don't know, there were literally thousands of people that had come in from all over Spain, and they would dress as zombies, and they literally would walk through this ancient city. We were at a restaurant, standing above, watching them go by. I mean, year was great. That was great.
That was so good.
I didn't see your film. Well, I didn't see a lot of the films there, but yes.
Sorry, I was playing at 2 a.m, so don't worry about
it. But that in Spain, that's a really good time, because from midnight to like 4 a.m., you get. Did your film play downtown, or did it play at the hotel?
It played downtown. It was at this cool old theater. I forgot what it was called, but it was.
That's where Battle Royale was.
Yeah. It's got this kind of like slightly grungy old vibe too, which was great. I loved it.
No, that's so funny.
All these really tight like pink shirts because he lost his luggage, so he had to go to like a.
So I had to buy clothes in Spain. Everything was like too small for like us fat Americans.
Yeah.
So I'm walking around these super tight shirts all weekend.
No, that's so funny. I mean, that was 9 years ago. It's just such a great festival, and so is Fantasia. But Fantasia's not on the water, and it's great. But
it's not on the water.
Yeah, and it's really long. I love Fantasia though, but Montreal's beautiful. But yeah, we do Fright Fest. That's the other one that we absolutely love.
It's amazing. I actually didn't get to go. I think Hills Run Red was there, and Dave Parker, the director, went there, but I didn't go. But
bummer.
I mean, going to genre, it's hard to explain to people how exciting it is to go to genre festivals that specialize and to hang out with the filmmakers and to watch the movies. I mean, it's the most uplifting place in the world.
Yeah.
It's the, I mean, Sundance and all that, that's fine. But I
Yeah.
would much rather go to genre film festivals.
Oh yeah, there's nothing better than spending after you've been all day watching movies, like being in a pub or a bar with like 100 people that all make or love horror movies or whatever genre stuff. It's just like it fuels you, man. You have the best time in the world, and you drink way too much. It's great.
Yeah, I want to say it was 2011? I met the two kids. They're basically kids that directed the French film Inside.
Oh yeah.
And I think they were it was almost as if they had too much sugar. They were bouncing off the walls. Like when I met them, I'm like, man, I love your movie. And then, this can't believe Americans love our movie. It was just the best.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was. Well, listen, let me ask you, since we're having this film festival and people that have never made films before and people that have made films before, what is some of the best advice you might give to new filmmakers, people that are maybe first picking up their cell phones for the first time with the idea of making a film, or
Just for making stuff?
yeah, I think just
it.
any advice you can give them about, because you came up making films together and
Yeah.
what are some of the things, what are some of the, I don't know, the filmmaking 101 lessons that you could impart to people?
I mean, for me, and I learned this the first time we made our first movie, especially on this time, is that like I always trust my gut. My gut is always right about people that work on the movie. If you hear something where like, and I'm not bagging on anything working on, but if you're like talking to the producers and they're trying to cut something because budgetarily it's a little scary, they don't have to figure it out, but you just know deep down, like, we cut that, we change that, this movie's not going to be good, or it's not going to work. And everyone will try to convince you, like, no, it'll still be fine, it'll still be good. You got to stick to your guns and like, yeah, roll over on the thing that you know doesn't matter that much and make everybody feel like you did. Like, yeah, we can do that. That's fine because you don't care that much. It doesn't hurt the movie. But on the things you know that need to be a certain way, just make sure you don't give up on that, because you just get mad at yourself when you're editing it later. And the whole run of the whole thing is nobody cares how much money you made it for. They don't care how much work it was, how long it took. None of that stuff matters. They just know if they liked it or not. And they compare you against Avengers Endgame. They don't see you as any different. Most audiences, maybe a film festival audience will see it differently, but most people do that. So when you're making it, don't get butthurt about like criticism when you're doing the edit. Just get it to the best possible place and check your ego at the door and just fight for the things you want to be good in it. So
I think I have one piece of information. This is more just learning about film. Is a million people have said this, but watch your favorite movies, and everybody's watched their favorite movie 1,000 times. But the thing is if you just watch your movie casually, like say you love Jaws and you watch that scene you love, you're going to get sucked into the scene and you're not going to pay attention to what they're doing to make you feel the thing that you love about that scene. Is watch those scenes, and this is so painful to do. Turn off the sound and watch it, and just think about how long the shots are, think about how it's composed, try and picture the crew is all standing behind while they're shooting that shot. Think about where the camera moves, when it moves, does it move when the characters move? All those things that they all, when a movie's really well made, to be honest, they're all invisible because the sound design's working, the music's working. Yeah. And even if it's really well shot, it tends to get a little invisible. But you'll watch your favorite scenes and you'll be a little bored. You'll have this like itchy feeling, like, oh, I want to turn up the music and watch it. But just watch it and then try and think about what the filmmaker, it's a weird thing, but think about what they were trying to achieve as they were doing it, and just go through it. Even if you want, you can do little doodles of the shots and think about the different compositions. That'll tell you more than anything. And most people watch bad movies and say, oh, this movie's bad because it's shaky cam, or they'll have these general sort of statements. But watch your favorite movies. Try and learn from those, not the shitty movies. And turn off the sound and force yourself to watch it 10, 20 times.
Oh, I've as an editor, that's predominantly what I've been doing over the last 20 years. I always tell people, you don't know whether the edit of a film is good until you've watched it silently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the only way for myself. And I started doing that on my own and seeing if my edits worked. Like, does this movie work with no sound at all?
Yeah.
Do the edits work? Because a lot of times people will use sound to bridge sketchy edits.
Yeah.
Continuity problems. They'll do something to. So I completely agree with that.
Music, it's the amazing spice, and you know this as an editor. But if you wait to even put in temp track as long as possible, don't put it in right off the bat and start cutting to like AC/DC. Because you're gonna be like, whoa, this is rad.
I totally agree with that.
Wait till after the thing, even if you want that AC/DC track, right? Or somehow you have the budget for something, whatever. Try and cut it roughly and try and figure out what's working about it without that track, and then add it in.
Nothing more painful than watching horror movies without sound design or music.
Oh,
they're just terrible.
But if you can make them work without it, then then it's golden. So what is next for you guys?
I mean, we're pitching on a ton of stuff. That's what it is. Like you're basically singing for your supper again as soon as you finish another movie. But like definitely we've had like doors open more than ever in our entire life, which is great. But it's 100% up to us to like walk through those and impress people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But we really, it's funny. You were talking about werewolves. We're just listening to chat about it. We've been trying to make this werewolf movie for so long that we've put together that we've been pitching
we're
everywhere.
in love with. We're obsessed. We feel like we have such a unique take on the werewolf. It's like the holy grail of all monster movies.
Yeah.
And we feel like we have such a special way into it that we'd love to do that. It's such a scary thing, I think, for studios. So it's going to be a mountain we might be climbing.
I think we're always trying to convince them that, like, we also always say it's like the next person to really pull off a werewolf movie, like a good one, is going to score so big. But it's partially like it's the same thing. It's like we got sick of all the terrible CG werewolves, so everyone has this bad taste in their mouth of werewolves. Yeah. And I'm like, no, there's a way to do it like mostly practical with a little bit of CG to like plus the practical. That could be absolutely amazing. And the truth is about monster movies, it's about what you don't see that makes them scary. It's about hearing the werewolf in the woods, but not seeing stuff move. It's like, it's all the other things that make it scarier. Finding, the remains of somebody that was attacked by a werewolf, and it's absolutely disgusting. That makes the werewolf scarier. He's not even in that scene. It's all about these things building your sense of what the werewolf is too.
Yeah, we love that people think that the witch is in our movie a lot, but it's actually only a couple of shots.
Yeah.
She's present through sound design, through things happening off camera, or something tips over, or there's a, whatever. But she's actually only in the shot a handful of times in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple things you guys do that I really like. Just little touches, like when rock and roll witch-possessed mom is having sex with her husband, and her husband's about to like find with his fingers the goo that's on her back. And she knows that without looking, and she grabs his hand and pulls it down before his hand. Because in any other movie, the guy would put his hand in the goo and realize you cut to the revulsion. But I love the fact that you made the choice that, nope, she knows what's up. She's going to keep the illusion going as long as possible. And it was there were just little touches throughout, dialogue flourishes and things that you did that made it, like you said, the movie of it all, you got rid of that. So it felt naturalistic, and it felt, I call myself the Viceroy of Verisimilitude. Well, your movie worked for me. The Viceroy of Verisimilitude anoints your film number one, because I really enjoy that, especially in horror films. So often that spell is shattered. It can be a camera angle that does it. It can be an effect shot that does it. But I think The Wretched's a wonderful, wonderful film, and I kind of wish I'd seen it when I was like 10, because it would have been a movie that I'd be like, oh my god, I can't believe I watched this, and I wouldn't tell my parents.
We're making our movies a lot of times for like 15-year-old us, because that's when we were most probably excited to see a movie. We'd never seen anything like that, and that's in a weird way. Even The Wretched for me, I feel like I'm making the like perfect movie for what I would have died to see when I was 15 years old.
Yeah. And I think also we were kind of like, because we went to film festivals and we're like, we made a movie, it's got teenage protagonists and stuff, so it's not adults. It's a little harder for adults to glam onto it, but I think we worked it out well. But we got so excited when we popped up on Hulu, because we were like, man, so many more like 10-year-olds will watch it, but so many more like teenagers will finally watch this movie, which we're excited to see what the reaction is that way. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be great, and it's terrific. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. This has been fantastic, you guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this was a real treat. I really, Brett, thank you for reaching out. And True, it's great to see you again.
Yeah.
And Hopefully,
when that movie gets off the ground, I'm ready to.
I still want to make it. Shatner's going to be 90 in March, so
Cool.
I'm trying to get the money together because I'd love to remaster the original film in 4K, and I've done a re-edit of it and just put it out the way it should be. But I think our goal, I think our collective goal, because I certainly feel this way, we both have to make more movies and get to Sigis together.
That sounds like
we got to go party in Sigis with our films. And if they could be a double feature in the Grand Malia Theater that's at the hotel. I mean, they'll play downtown as well, because usually films play both downtown. If they play at the hotel, they'll play at the. For people who don't know, at Sigis they have this beautiful hotel on a hill. It's high up, and you can walk between the hotel and downtown. It's a gorgeous walk, but you want to get in that big, gigantic auditorium and play downtown.
Yeah, it's always like it opened up my eyes going to Sitges, because like anytime I hear anyone disparaging like Spain for being relaxed and lazy, I'm like, it's amazing. They're living life right. I'm sorry, that's what they're doing.
Oh, and then it's like, what are you going to do during the day? You take the train to Barcelona, you hang out, and what's great is you can stay in Barcelona, you can go to a club, you can leave the club at 1:30 in the morning, hop on the train, and then get to the movie at 2:00 at night.
Yeah.
And then afterwards go to Pacha in the marina to the bar down there at 6 a.m. to watch the sun come up. It's the greatest film festival ever. Well, I want to congratulate you both. I loved The Wretched. It was great to talk to you guys. Now, people can see it. Where can they see it? And do you guys have an online presence? Do you have a website? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, Drew and I are kind of like the worst social. Well, I'm on Instagram. I'm at Jack Star Grundy. I'm on there all the time.
And we were on the Wretched Instagram. It's
at the Wretched. Yeah, at the Wretched movie on Instagram. The movie's on Hulu currently. We're playing with all the Huluween stuff, which is really cool. The Blu-ray, you can get it on Amazon, all the places you buy.
By the way, thanks for my Blu-ray.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
I'm a big physical media fan. By the way, the Blu-ray looks great.
Oh, good. It's one of those weird things you kind of, as the indie guy, you don't get to necessarily supervise it as much as
But why are there no special features?
Mainly because...
Come on, man.
It would have fallen to Drew and I to make every one of them.
Of course.
And we just finished the movie, and we were kind of like...
And I mean, I don't know how much we want to dive into it, but I mean, obviously we did our commentary, which was cool, and Devin did, but our composer. But I made a bunch of little short couple-minute things, but the truth is like, they're not that interested in special features unless it's all on your end, and it's a lot of...
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing to sort of push, so maybe eventually we'll get to do more.
Probably my biggest regret on this one, we just didn't have the money for it, is I want somebody to cover our production next time, more like the making of, because I'm like, this is so cool. Nobody's ever going to know what we did.
There's some really cool behind-the-scenes type stuff you can find online, because IFC basically wanted stuff, and I just cut together like a couple-minute sizzle reels with Mallory talking about playing the character and
special
effects makeup stuff and the process, seeing her get it all done and some of those things. So there are a couple of really cool ones. And there's stuff of like people passing like the scissors through the body of like Sarah when she has like the big ripper. Like there's some cool stuff, but I mean, at the end of the day, they didn't really request anything, and it would have been a big hassle to try and get it to them. They're just not that interested.
We were, no matter what, even though the movie was coming up, we were still working on the movie and working on all our pitches. So it was kind of like, I spent days making this stuff. I'm like, when are we going to do that? I don't know. So.
Well, listen, this has been. Are you guys here in LA?
Yeah. I'm in. He's in Eagle Rock and I'm in Los Feliz.
Oh, I live in Pasadena, man. We should get together and have lunch or something.
5 minutes away.
Yeah. So we should definitely get together. I'd love to hear more Sigis stories and
Oh, dude, yeah. We'll share over some whiskey or something at some point.
Sold.
Cool.
Done.
Oh, our buddy. I don't know if are you familiar with the Mortuary Collection?
Oh
no.
You know what the Mortuary Collection is?
I'm
just gonna say this. One of my favorite films I saw through the whole sort of run of festivals was at. Where did we see that?
We saw Toronto After Dark.
Our buddy Ryan Spindell, he made this movie called The Mortuary Collection. It's an anthology movie. It's probably one of my favorite anthology movies of all time.
I've never even heard of this.
Oh, dude.
Go check it out.
It comes out on Shudder
It's
October
on Shudder
15th.
On the 15th. And you should have him on. He's one of my favorite sort of up-and-coming filmmakers. He's kind of in the like fun horror vibe kind of thing. Yeah. It feels a lot like kind of like a really good creep show, which I love. A couple, usually anthologies are hit or miss, but I love all of the shorts in this anthology.
And did he direct them all, or are they directed by different people?
He directed all of them.
He directed them. They made it over the course of like 5 years, I think, this film. It's an amazing story. They're beautiful. Yeah. The look of this movie is somewhere between like, not to like shamelessly promote his stuff, but it's awesome. It feels very much like Tim Burton meets Sam Raimi kind of vibe. The feel of it is very fairy tale. The production design is insane. But you should have him on because I'm sure, one, he'd probably love to promote his mortuary collection, but you'd also just get along with him. He's a cool dude.
It's probably the best Halloween treat you can have. It's coming
well,
out
I would if you can pass along his information, like his email or something.
Yeah, we will.
We're going to see him tomorrow night.
So
we're doing backyard distance drinks. So I'll let him know.
Yeah, well, tell him you had a good interview here.
I will.
Because I want to do that for the month of October. And being that we're having this film festival and it's open to it's the first, by the way, intergalactic film festival we're having. We've opened the festival submissions up to anybody who's extraterrestrial.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Hopefully we'll get something. I know there's a language barrier, and maybe they don't have the quatlus to pay for the fee, but hey, we'll make exceptions. But it was great. I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time to come on the show and talk about this, because I really do. I honestly really love your movie. And your story is great, and this is I know that the viewers, I mean, one of the things, there's so many YouTube pundit channels, but to be able to talk to filmmakers is something that is unique, I think, for me to do. So thank you so much.
You've saved my summer, because I was stuck inside all the time, and I started I was listening to John Sustris, is that his name? Sustris?
The Word Balloon podcast.
And you popped up on there a couple of times and talked about Robservations, started watching it, and it became like I go home at night and I work out in my living room and I watch your show.
Wow.
That's like my routine for like all summer. It's been great.
So are you going to watch this episode tonight?
Yes, I will watch this episode all over again.
No, our mom will definitely be watching now.
She'll love it.
Oh, this was so great. I mean, thank you guys for being on. I'd keep you on forever, but I've got to go read more letters and.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Rob.
And thanks. I mean, this is just fantastic, you guys. And everybody, watch The Wretched and watch it on Hulu, but also buy the Blu-ray. Do both.
Yeah. Yes.
Why not?
And it's on VHS. Weirdly enough. So.
Is it really?
Yeah. Lunch Meat VHS put out a special edition.
Awesome. I've got 2 copies somewhere around there. It's amazing. It's like my favorite. I haven't played it yet.
Oh, that is awesome. That is fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's fun.
Well, gentlemen, I will take my leave of you, and I want to thank you very much for being on the show.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Take care, man. Stay safe.
All right, let's get together soon.
Yeah. Sooner than later.
All right. I'll see you guys later. What a treat that was. I want to thank them for both. I didn't know I was going to get both the Pierce brothers on, but wow, that was fantastic. Hopefully that I can bring you more of the interviews like that. I've got a couple of people, horror directors, coming on to talk about their projects this month, which I will keep you abreast of. And we're celebrating, of course, all kinds of filmmaking because, as you all know, we are in the midst of 45 days left to submit films for the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. So that is pretty cool. Let's see what you guys have been saying in the chat and things like that. There's a couple things that were, when I set this up, there was a couple things. Anthony Luculano sent in a few super chats. Now, Anthony told me that he watched all of these movies for the first time with the exception of one. So he says, so far, this October, I've watched The Fog, Prince of Darkness, They Live, Don't Look Now, The Wicker Man, The Vampire Lovers, great Hammer title, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Christine, and Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, The Sixth Sense, Hellraiser, Hellraiser 2, Reanimator, and Silver Bullet. Out of those, the only rewatch I've done is Evil Dead 2. So we got to see all these for the first time. And he went up to his favorite place to buy Blu-rays and bought Don Siegel's The Killers, The House on Sorority Row, Last of the Mohicans, The Girl with All the Gifts, and The Florida Project. What a great bunch of movies you're getting. Anthony goes on to say, I think I did pretty well with my haul. I'd say you did too. So congratulations on that. I love everybody celebrating horror films, the great legacy of horror films. I mean, obviously one of my favorite genres growing up. I was a horror fanatic, and although I was a little highbrow in my tastes, in my horror tastes, I must say. But we got next week Scream Factory's incredible box set of all the Friday the 13th movies is coming out. I mean, I think it's 14 discs or something. Amazing. Calvin Bowles says Braxton, our friend Calvin says that Braxton. Hang on, you know what? Let me readjust the sound here for a little bit. There we go. Okay, now I'm back to where I should be. Braxton said, Calvin says that his son Braxton's like 6, dude. Braxton saw Halloween and has a question. When Michael is chasing Laurie and she cries for help at one house, why did she not just smash their window? That would have gotten them to come out or at least call the cops. That's actually a good question. Braxton is a smart kid. Maybe because, we're so trained in suburbia not to go up to somebody's house and just break the windows. But you're probably right. But maybe somebody wasn't home. They might have been at a Halloween party. And that's why they didn't answer the door. That's all I can think about. Murray Reich is here. Murray Reich says, I know this sounds crazy, but I just got around to watching the Alien franchise. I like the first 2 films, and I just finished watching the third one, and I was pretty disappointed with it. Should I bother watching Resurrection, or just skip it? No, you should watch it. But if you can, get the box set. If you have the Alien Anthology Blu-ray box set, watch the version of Alien 3 that Charlie de Lauzirika oversaw the reconstitution of. It's pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. Stubble McShave is here and says, there were reports on the Lord of the Rings series, the new Lord of the Rings series, having nudity and maybe sex. Reports were based on casting calls requiring nudity and the hiring of an intimacy coordinator. Tolkien only had a chaste kiss or two in the films and didn't take it further. In the books, you mean. Will fans accept the tonal shift? Okay, for what Stubble is saying is that, yes, indeed, there are, apparently there's going to be sex scenes in the Lord of the Rings series. Now, to me, it really, if they're trying to emulate Game of Thrones, and I hope they're not, it depends where they're going to go. Now, the second age of Middle-earth was full of shenanigans. There was a lot of shenanigans happening, and there's a lot of, if you know about the Second Age, if you've read the Silmarillion, there's a lot of double crossing, and there's a lot of political machinations, and I think that one of the things that this Amazon series is going to contend with, and it's something the showrunners are going to have to deal with and be very cognizant of, is that, look, you have 6 films that people identify so much with. When people think Lord of the Rings, there's the 3 movies. If you haven't read the books, and The Hobbit even as well, and you have to deal with the fact that whatever series you're doing, you're leading up to those stories, you're leading up to those movies, and whether you want to or not, if Amazon's going to say this isn't your parents' Lord of the Rings, and they're going to start throwing in graphic sex, it's going to turn a lot of people off simply because that's not what... I mean, Game of Thrones was always full of lusty antics, but not Lord of the Rings. And I think it's definitely something that is going to need to be considered. And I'm sure it already has been considered, but you can't make a bunch of randy... A sexually explicit Lord of the Rings, I think, is going to turn people off. I really do, because that's just tonally... Look, it's the same way... The showrunners who decided to start using fuck in Star Trek. Like, let's throw some fucks in Picard. I understand what they're trying to do, but it's incredibly off-putting. I'm not even a prude, I swear like a sailor. And I love my sex scenes. I love eroticism in film and television. But if you're watching something where it's completely incongruous with what you're watching, there doesn't need to be bad language in Star Trek. And when there is, it's just another way... that the showrunners are tone deaf, which tomorrow I'm going to do a whole show about that after watching the Star Trek Lower Decks finale, which everybody's over the moon about, but I thought was some of the most offensive Star Trek I'd ever seen in my life. But hey, so I don't think people will accept that tonal shift stubble, because that's not what. Look, if you're making a Lord of the Rings series, if you're not going to have some kind of loyalty, or if you're not going to show fealty to the original books and the original intent of Tolkien, then why are you making the show? I understand people are like, well, people expect, audiences expect, sex and violence, and no, they expect a great story. Ultimately, that's all people want. If you're going to throw sex and violence, I mean, do I like the sex in Game of Thrones? Did I like when they went to Littlefinger's brothel and there's lots of boobage all over the place? Yes, because of my prurient desires to see boobies since I was a little kid. So I like that. I'll always love boobies, and why shouldn't I? But if the story for Game of Thrones wasn't good, it would have just been gratuitous. Nobody needs that. Nobody needs those kinds of things. So, anyway, Stubble McShave sends in a tip again and says, I rewatched The Exorcist recently. Many of the effects still hold up. Great performances by Linda Blair for being such a young actress, and I love Max von Sydow's performance. He totally sells it as an old man. I can't believe he was only in his 40s. I think The Exorcist remains my favorite horror film of all time, because it is, to me, the perfect combination of true supernatural satanic horror, which I love. I love the devil as a protagonist. I've always loved the devil as a protagonist. I love Satan. I renounce Satan, but as a fictional construct, I've loved Satan. But one of the things I like is verisimilitude as well. And to me, The Exorcist is the perfect synthesis of verisimilitude between real, it's almost documentary 70s style of filmmaking that Friedkin brought to that film, to the actual. I mean, I'm not even a Catholic, but one of the things I love about The Exorcist is the idea of a Catholic priest whose life, raison d'etre in life, is to be a priest. And if a priest has lost his faith, that to me is a very compelling story, that his very reason for being is gone. And in the course of The Exorcist, that in confronting the ultimate this ultimate force corrupting this innocent, he comes to believe, he comes to find his faith again. I love this story. I think this is a fantastic story, and that's one of the reasons I do love. Look, I love all the profane shit and the head spinning and the green pea soup spitting and the masturbating with a crucifix because it's so profane. I love all that. I'm not going to deny it. But at its core, it's the story of people. And Father Marin and Father Karras, their stories are what's compelling to me, and that's what I think is the most important, and that's why I love that movie. But yeah, Max von Sydow, the great Dick Smith, doing that makeup, making him look old. I mean, that film is one of a kind, and it's my favorite horror film because it means something. It matters. It's sure it might not have the pulp fun of, say, Dawn of the Dead for me or Phantasm, but I love it because I think it's a great film. And again, it celebrates one of my favorite things about the horror genre, and I've always loved this about horror, is that horror to me is one of the most moral and one of the most human of genres, because at the end of the day, people in characters in the horror films usually are they're fighting for their humanity. They're fighting for their existence, and they're fighting for the ability to live another day. And I think that's, sure, there are horror anti-heroes, but I like the fact that mostly the human beings in horror movies are heroic. And yeah, can you have anti-heroes in horror movies? Sure. Can you have hard-bitten souls that are irredeemable? Sure. I mean, I think about movies like Near Dark, and as much as I love the vampire troupe in Near Dark, what makes the movie great is that Caleb and his father and his younger sister retain their humanity, and they're going to look for him, and they're going to save him from the vampire hordes. And I like that. I've always liked that about the horror genre, that at the end of the day, it is about retaining your humanity, and nothing does it better than The Exorcist. Sure. I mean, Damien Karras, come into me, and he takes the demon, whether it's Pazuzu, whether it's Satan, whatever you want to call it, and sacrifices himself in order to save an innocent. Not exactly an uplifting ending you're going to write home to mom about, but it's still something that is worth watching. Brendan Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, video game movies get a bad rap, but I like Silent Hill. Wonderful visuals which capture the creepiness of the game, surprisingly complex plot. You know what? I like the first Silent Hill. I didn't love it, but I liked it a lot. There's a lot of creepy imagery in it, and I think the one thing that hampered it was the video game. You know, they had to work in a lot of the video game tropes, which they did, but I'm a huge fan of Silent Hill. I mean, I think for what it is, it's certainly, as you point out, Brendan, it is one of the most successful video game adaptations, and I certainly will agree with you there. Let's go back to, if my moderators are into it, I will keep going. Like, why not? We're past 2 hours, but if you guys are into it, why not? Because we got letters, and I got letters that I haven't read. Let's see where I'm at. Let's see whose letter is next. Oh, that's a whining about movies letter. I'll read that one tonight. This one comes from Emma Bannon. Emma says, Emma's a fan of the show, more a recent imagination connoisseur, but she and I have we go back and forth all the time. I always love hearing from Emma. Emma says, "Hi, Rob and fellow imagination connoisseurs. I'm reading Some Kind of Hero at the moment. A really interesting book that covers the history of the James Bond films, going in depth as to how each was made, the alternate versions that they had in mind, the release, and critical and financial reception they had. I am gripped by this particular book, and I find the minutiae incredibly fascinating. 2 questions spring to mind. What book about the making of film or films have you personally liked and would recommend? And do you think that this kind of material should be published, or should the mystery, if there is any these days, be maintained?" Well, first of all, Emma, God, I mean, I have so many books here, but I think Robert Evans' book, The Kid Stays in the Picture, is a fascinating one. I mean, just about Hollywood. William Goldman's book, Adventures in the Screen Trade, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, is a great book. I'm a huge fan of Rinzler. Rinzler's name, the last name of the author. Rinzler's books. I loved his books on the making of the original Star Wars trilogy. They're fantastic. I loved, he just had the Making of Aliens come out. I loved his Making of Alien book. And before that, his Planet of the Apes book that came out. His making of books are fantastic. But there's so many different books. I mean, you know what? I got this recently. I have not read this yet, but this is a visual history. This is the ultimate visual history of Close Encounters. You know, I recently got that. I mean, and again, I'll tell you something that even though it covers special effects, and I've mentioned this before, and they're not as exciting these days, but I think the first 25 years of let's see, let me get it. This is my original copy of Cinefex magazine. Now, this came out, this is the first issue of Cinefex. This is my first issue. I bought it off the rack. This was a Cinefex magazine. There was only 2 articles in this magazine. One, of course, on the making of Star Trek the Motion Picture. The other on the making of Alien. And this magazine is, most of them are, this is on the top of I'm dusting a magazine. That's how crazy I am. But you can get Cinefex. I think a lot of them are online. But if you're interested in visual effects and how things, I mean, they covered most of the large visual effects movies from 1979. They're still going to the present day. And I think you can get their back issues online, which is great. I've got about 100 issues here on my bookshelf, but that's always a good resource and really interesting. Also, there's a book called Nobody Does It Better that is the oral history of the James Bond films that my friend Mark Altman, who I made Free Enterprise with, and his co-author Ed Gross wrote. And it is a terrific oral history from all the people involved on the making of the Bond films. It's a big, thick hardcover book. I don't know if it's come out in paperback, but that's definitely something that you'd want to check out. So Emma, check those out. I think you will dig them. Omar94 is here. Omar94 asks, "Hi, Rob. One thing I've never quite got my head around is why there are notoriously long hours when making movies and TV shows. I get that it takes a long time a lot of time and effort to make a movie and a TV show, but I always felt really long hours was pushing it. There are examples of why it may take a long time, like some perfectionist filmmakers taking their time, such as David Fincher, who always does an extraordinary amount of takes for his movies. I understand it's not a 9-to-5 type of job, but I always find it odd when I hear or read how long people have to stay awake and or on set, like how I will hear or read something like directors, actors, or crew members saying they showed up on set at something like 4 in the morning and filming wrapped at maybe 2 in the morning as examples. You've worked on film sets, so you must have experience and knowledge on why that is. Thanks, live long and prosper. Well, I do. I can tell you exactly why. Here's the problem. When you're on a film set, there is a lot of time that is inevitably chewed up by doing what are called setups. And let's say you want to shoot a scene, and this is some of the worst kind of scenes that chew up the most time. You want to shoot a scene where 6 people are having dinner at a restaurant. All right? Now, I've said this before. I don't like these scenes. I don't think many directors like these scenes. How do you shoot 6 people at a restaurant? Well, if you think about it, you've got to get coverage of all those 6 people. So, you've got your big wide master of the whole table, but since there's 6 people, you might have to shoot multiple masters depending. So that's 1 shot or 2 shots. Then you've got your close-ups and your mediums of everybody. So you've got 12 shots. There's this shot and there's this shot, depending on how you want it. So you got your medium, you got your close-up. So that's 12 shots. Then you've got combination shots, like maybe you want to have 2 people in the frame. So you're already at 14 shots. There's 16 shots, 18 shots. So say for that dinner scene, then you've got the waiter that comes over and brings the food. Then you might have insert shots you have to shoot. So say you shoot 6 people at a table. Every single one of those shots, the cameras have to be moved. The lights have to be moved. You might have to lay down dolly track if you want to do a Quentin Tarantino spin around all the 6 people to make it easier. So you do it in a oneer. Who knows? But you cannot change how cameras and crew work. You have to move the lights. You have to move the electrics. You have to move everything. And that burns up time. Now, here's the thing. You've got a finite schedule. So let's say you have to shoot a 120-page script. Well, how long? And you only have a certain amount of money. So you're locked into, say, okay, you've got a 120-page script. It's a big budget movie. Let's say you're shooting it. You've got a 12-week shooting schedule. And it's a 5-day week. So okay, how many pages do you have to finish a day to make it in 12 weeks? Because that's all you have. You're burning, say, $100,000 a day, $50,000 a day if you're an indie movie, or even cheaper than that. But you're burning that much money a day. So the question is, how many shots do you get in a day? Now, the reason that they have 12 hours, the reason people shoot for 12 hours, they have different hours in Europe, but in America, we get away with 12 hours. Is because there's that much work that needs to be done. Because if you weren't shooting for 12 hours and you're shooting for 8 hours, you wouldn't get the work done. And then on the back end, you would need to spend more money. And if you're spending $100,000 a day, so you're locked into, production is locked into various things. There's just realities on how movies are made. The actual process, it really hasn't changed in 100 years. But that process is limiting. And as a director, you have to decide, again, if you have to shoot 5 pages a day. On Femme Fatales, we basically had to shoot 10 pages a day. It was a nightmare. And, you can't even, you're not even shooting half the time. You're compromising as the director. You're compromising on your vision. You're compromising on what you want to hope to achieve. Like, how many pieces of coverage do you need? Like, look, you can shoot every scene in do what's called a oneer, where you just set up the camera and make it one scene. Well, that's not cinema. With cinema, you need editorial. You need more and more shots, more coverage. Each shot you make is a piece of coverage. And so it depends how much coverage you want to use. I mean, a lot of directors like Michael Bay will set up 8 cameras at once and keep running the scene and shoot a bunch of coverage all at once. That's one way to do it. But if you're a director who, like Stanley Kubrick, for instance, whose compositions are incredibly important, I mean, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I mean, I'm very aware that as an editor what I need to get, but I also like the spontaneity of things. I mean, I would never do the takes like David Fincher does. I'd love to have that ability, but I just don't. But that's why it takes a long time, and that's why people have to work long hours. I'll give you an example. I mean, on Free Enterprise, there was one day where we were at a club called the Garden of Eden, We knew we had to shoot a certain amount of material in that club. We knew that we couldn't do it in 12 hours. You just can't do it, even the way I was shooting, which was limited coverage and going very fast. So we had to schedule a 16-hour day, which means people get overtime and that kind of thing. And it was a day we had Shatner, and it was a full day. He was there for 16 hours. And so all that was pre-planned, and we got all the stuff we needed. Well, we didn't quite get it. We missed a few things, but that's to be expected when time runs out, and which it always does in a movie production. If you're making a movie and you ever get to make a feature film and you're on set, let me tell you, there is never enough time in the day. Even if you were shooting 24 hours a day, you would still want more coverage than you shot. You never get everything you need. You just try and get what you can, and it can be rough. Renato Valley is here. Renato Valley says, hello again. My blood pressure jumped as I heard you massacre my name and read my letter. This is an example of my sense of humor that sometimes gets me into trouble. Well, Renato Valley, I think. I don't know. I understand your concern about being the in-betweener without knowing more about the product. Well, the title of the mentioned screenplay is Frenetic. Frenetic, it looks that way. It's a one-man, one-location, one-camera screenplay. Probably because I do like to write for theater, there can be a lot of restrictions if you write for theater. If you're lucky and you have a bit of a budget, you can maybe change the decor for Act 2. As for the screenplay, it doesn't mean that a one-location, one-man, one-camera screenplay can't make an impact. Frenetic is about a troubled man accepting his condition. If there was a poster, the studio tagline would be, "Are you schizophrenic if you hear your own voice?" Oh, I like that. Well, you know, studios. Essentially, it's about how his mind copes with time and space. Is the mind a dimension? How can he trust himself? Could be another tagline. More is spoiler. If you'd feel more comfortable, I can send you a copy, but then you might want to direct it yourself. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, my sense of humor again. So if anyone is interested, I created this email. Kathwak, quack. Thank you very much in Klingon, but you knew that. Phonetic. Oh, it's Renato Valley. Renato Valley. There you go, which I see looks eerily similar. Listen, man, I mean, here's the reason I can't accept screenplays. I really shouldn't read people's books, but books are already published and I might buy them anyway. But I can't accept screenplays from anyone because if I happen to be developing something and your screenplay is similar and I end up making it, you open yourself up to lawsuits. Normally, when I get stuff from people, they have to fill out forms. But here's what I would say to you. Why not shoot a scene from this film or do a short version of it? When Lucas Kendall directed Skyfighter, he took his feature-length script, cut it down, and made a 15-minute short out of it. Why not make it as a film and submit it to our our film festival? Why not do that? I would like to see what you could do with that. Let's see. Direct it yourself. Make it happen. Flash dance that. Make it happen. Take your passion and make it happen. I think you should do it. Hey, the Justin's here. Haven't heard from the Justin in a while. The Justin says, hello, Rob. Here, it's the Justin here with a quick letter. This is a tough time for many of us imagination connoisseurs with our most anticipated films being pushed back and theaters closing all over. I find myself stuck in a bit of a rut. Not to get too dark, but I've suffered from depression and anxiety nearly all my life. Like you, however, I consider my passions, most notably film, to be my therapy and antidepressant. And with so many heavy things hanging over our heads, both socially and politically, the need for escapism is even more important. A year ago, I left my demanding day job to pursue comics. Good for you, man. With a focus and enthusiasm I hadn't had since college. Writing and drawing a comic on your own may be a monumental feat, but after years of dreaming of breaking in by way of an editor taking a shot on me based on good faith and a solid portfolio, I have come to the conclusion that my origin will be a bit different. If only I had seen 2020 coming. I know there are bigger issues in the world, but this year I've hit a massive wall. A creative blockage that has given me an analysis paralysis of sorts. And even though I'm doing some of my best work, I still struggle with constant doubt. I'm aware this happens to all creatives, but usually I would take this opportunity to run to the theater or clear my head in a crowded bar with a notepad, so finding new ways to keep myself engaged and centered has been a challenge all by itself. I often think about your episode 497, where you talked about separating the doers from the dreamers, and it gives me the much-needed push to keep going. I've also been inspired by the dedication of the poster artists and filmmakers participating in the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival. Their quick response speaks volumes about how many doers we have here in the Post-Geek singularity. Hopefully, I prove to be a doer as well. Here's a link below to my Instagram if anyone wants to see the concept art I've shared so far. Why don't I put that in the live chat? Which I will. Here it is. It's in the live chat. There you go. Well, Rob, I must be off now because the work is never finished. P.S. Next time I promise to write another fun letter. I have a Predator pitch I think you might like. Well, Justin, thank you for writing in. I very much appreciate it. Good to hear from you. You know, here's the thing. Here's the thing about doing anything. A lot of people want to do things. The idea of, oh man, it'd be fun to make a movie. I'd love to make these things. I'd love to make a comic book. Well, what people really mean is they want to make a movie that they're going to win an Academy Award for. They do. I mean, and I understand that. I do. I understand where people are coming from. But whenever I hear people tell me that, you know, you should, I really want to do this, my answer is always like, just so do it. Like, why am I listening to you tell me that you want to do something? If you want to do something, I really don't understand why you don't. Why don't you? Why don't you go do it? Why are you telling me about it? I would love to see the finish. Like, I am the most supportive guy in the world. My friends will tell you. I love if somebody makes something or does something or usually movies, it's harder if people... It's harder, you know, if I can watch something in 10 minutes or 2 hours, it's easier. Because, like, I'm not a casual reader, for instance. I can't just skim people's books. I can't skim people's screenplays. I'm like, I have to know. But, I mean, if you want to do something, and I think the Post-Geek Singularity is stepping up. I mean, yes, we've had 4 films so far play at the film festival. Wildly divergent in tone and quality, and I've loved every minute of it. I've loved every time I open, like today's film, Wiener Killer. Not to everyone's taste, I'm sure. I've watched that movie like 10 times. I've laughed every single time. There's just something about it. I mean, you know, I would watch a whole movie about those two guys. There was a I don't even know if they're still on YouTube. There were these guys, they were making, it's a comedy called Bondi Hipsters. And these are guys from Australia, and they're from Bondi Beach. It's a place that's right outside of Sydney. It's right, you know, it's Bondi. It's a hipster place. It's a great place to hang out. But these guys are Bondi hipsters, and I laughed insanely. I loved Bondi hipsters. I don't know why. They just struck me. And then there was another, I mean, this is like 15 years old now. I don't even know if it's still around. There was these animated shorts, Strindberg and Helium, where I don't even know who came up with this or why. It's like August Strindberg, let me tell you about the horrible darkness that besets me and what life is all about. And then he's got a helium balloon who would just parrot what he would say. Helium, darkness. I don't know why I love that shit, but I do. And somebody made it. Somebody made it. The guys who made Bondi Hipsters, they came up with this thing and they went and made it. And Strindberg and Helium. I mean, that's just 15 years ago. You know, I love the guy who made the Vader sessions. You know, one of the things that I was hoping to do, one of the great things about the internet is I love when people, like the Oral Knots. Like, I love the Oral Knots. The guy, if you don't know the Oral Knots, they crack me up, but I don't know where they came from. Or the Vader sessions when the guy took James Earl Jones's voice from other roles other than Darth Vader and put them in Darth Vader's mouth. Whoever thought of that, I love that. And that's one of the things that I was hoping to get with this film festival that we're doing. And, you know, whether it's B.L. Alley doing The Trip or whether it's Patrick and Dieter doing a sequel to The Secret Exchange, you know, or whether it's those very accomplished Irish filmmakers making Crawl Space with a rhyming poem, you know, or whether it's with our new filmmakers today that Diesel Time and Shaggy making Wiener Killer. I mean, these are people that just did it. Just went out and did it. Like, why not? You know, I once self-published a comic book. I thought that would be cool. We just did it. And I think that, you know, you learn something about yourself and about others and about your craft. And I think that I don't ever want to. I know people suffer from depression and creative blockage and all that. You don't want to poo-poo those things because they are very real. I mean, there's nothing scarier than staring at a blank page when you're supposed to come up with something. But you should just do it. You know, just make it. Have it, put it out there. And then, you know, the real problem is, I think the problem with it all is that everybody expects, and you can't not, you know, you want financial success. Whatever it is that you make, you want to get financial success. You want to be recognized. But what dissuaded me of that was the day that Free Enterprise opened, June 4th, 1999. You know, renting a limo, this movie, I wanted my whole life to make a film. My goal is to make a film when I was 30. You know, I basically did that with my childhood idol, and we won all these film festival awards, and I traveled around the world, and we went, when it opened in theaters in LA, nobody went. It made no money. And my directing career, such as it was over in an afternoon. From 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I knew, even though we'd been getting good reviews, good write-ups in the trades, in the LA Times, New York Times, I knew that was basically the end of my film career at that point. I mean, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, you know, I wanted to write and direct films my whole life. I got to make one. I got my time at bat. You know, I got into the majors. If this movie I worked on, Pastime, its original title was One Cup of Coffee. And I didn't realize that there was baseball slang in the minors. If you get to play in the major leagues, there's a slang called, well, how long are you in the majors for? And somebody would say, just a cup of coffee, which just means a short time, which I always liked. I always liked that idea. Well, did you get to make a feature film? I did, but it was just there I just had a cup of coffee. Now, I plan to get back there. It's been 20 years, but I've stayed in the game doing DVD special features and producing movies and, you know, having things like, look, I get an associate producer credit on John Campea's movie. It's in film festivals starting next week. Tango Shalom is starting its festival run. It's playing in some very specific festivals I can tell you about later, but starting in February. So, you know, I worked 4.5 years on that. And the brothers today talked about some people take 8 years to make their film. But, you know, you want to get success. But I would say that you can never do anything and expect financial success. Look at how many artists were never discovered till after they died. You have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy what you're making. And if you enjoy what you're making, well, then you've won. If you've made a film for this film festival and you had a good time making it and you're satisfied with the results, and I like it, you know, I'll play it. And that's what it's all about. And if you had a good time, and we've now have 4 films officially put up. There's a few more, I think, that have come in. And to me, I just like that kind of creativity. But my advice is, if you want to do something, you just got to do it, man. You just got to do it. You really do. Ray Brady says... The Expanse Season 5 trailer dropped and it looks amazing. That's fantastic. I know that comes out in December. I'm very excited. Wow, that's cool. I can't wait to see that. Jeff Yerke. I think, Jeff, we have your name. Is your last name Yerke or Yerk? Because we have it Yerk. Your posters are wrong. Jeff Yerke says, hi, Rob. Mrs. Yerke says, hi. I just wanted to thank you for today's interview. It was great. I wish I was more into horror, but I'm too chicken shit. We'll have to settle for Star Trek, Westerns, New German cinema, and film noirs. Live long and prosper, the Yerk Man. Listen, I have to tell you guys, I really love The Wretched. And I even forgot, I feel guilty. Ed Pulgardi, who's one of the producers on the film, I didn't mention him. But I think they really did a great job. And to me, what I really liked about The Wretched so much is that there was as we heard today from the brothers, there was a very clear vision. And I'm always about authorship, as you all know. And one of the things about The Wretched, first of all, I think it's very well directed. And it's got some great imagery, but they succeeded in doing what they set out to do. And that's what I loved about it. I mean, it's got a great witch. It's got a great story. It's got some surprising stuff in it. Yeah, they made it for very little money. Do I compare it to Neil Jordan's Interview with a Vampire? No. But for what they were trying to do, I think they would succeed. Like I'm always talking about on whining about movies. You know, there are some movies that well, you know, four glasses of wine should be saved for Lawrence of Arabia. But my contention is that no. My contention is that a movie should be rated as to what it was trying to achieve on its own. Because if I'm going to put Phantasm next to Lawrence of Arabia and compare the two and go, well, which is a better movie? It's not really fair. The comparison doesn't make any sense. Because Phantasm was another movie that took years to make, and Don Coscarelli stuck with it. And can you compare that to David Lean making Lawrence of Arabia? No. What you have to do is you always compare a movie to itself. At least I do. Everything. I pretty much compare everything unto itself. I don't like comparing and contrasting. Those questions like if you have to get rid of, here's 10 movies, you can keep 3, but you have to get rid of the rest. I don't like those questions because I understand what people are going for, like which one's your favorite. But I'm like, I don't have to answer that because I own them all and they're right over there. So I don't have to make those things, and I don't have to answer those questions. And I think that when I watched The Wretched, for instance, I'm like, these guys, they made exactly the movie they set out to make. And I enjoyed that. And I felt it when I was watching it. I felt it. Now, some people are, I'm sure, will watch a movie like that. There's people that can't even buy into the notion of that witch. Yeah, I get that. And it's not going to work for them. But, Jeff, I think you should check out The Wretched's part of Huluween. Hey, if you have Hulu, check it out. I think it's a lot of fun. And it's not that long. I don't know what the running time is. Maybe is it 90 minutes, maybe a little over, but it was a lot of fun to watch. Watch the horror, and that was a great conversation. Those guys are on it. They know what's up. Rosetta Allen sends in a super chat and said, "Been too long since I've talked to you. Hope you are doing well. I've been away from home for a long time, going home this weekend." Well, Rosetta, welcome home. Good to have you back. I hope to see more of you here. Thanks for definitely supporting the channel. Very much appreciated. Well, Well, listen, I don't want to kill my moderators since we are going to be back tonight for Whining About Movies. Nightmare on Elm Street. We'll be back talking about the original, the Wes Craven 1984 original that Elizabeth, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, had not seen. So that is pretty exciting, and I can't wait to hear what she has to say about it. And I forgot, that movie's quite enjoyable. A Nightmare on Elm Street's a lot of fun. I like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, so it'll be fun to talk about that. And I think, let's see, hang on. What I was going to do was read a letter. Let's see. Brandon Plummer writes in and says, "Hey Rob and crew, I'm in the process of making an animated film for the festival, but it won't be completed until closer to the deadline. I was wondering if there was a way to sign my film up as a project that's still in production. I'm going to try and upload the teaser trailer to your Dropbox. Thanks for your time, Brandon Plummer." Well, as we state in the rules for the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival, you can submit a work in progress. Here's the thing. As a filmmaker and as somebody, depending on what you want to do with your film, sometimes I would always argue against, because as you heard today, you always want to put your best foot forward. I would love to play a trailer, and if you explain that the trailer is a work in progress, you can still submit a trailer as a film. There's nothing that says you can't, but you do say it won't be completed. You say you're making an animated film for the festival, but it won't be completed until closer to the deadline. Well, listen, if you submit your film on December 1st at 11:59 and 59 seconds, that's fine. That's fine. I'm still going to play it and treat it. It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm surprised I got entries now. I didn't think I was going to get any entries until November, to be honest. But people are very industrious. So I'm very happy to play your movie whenever you turn it in. But I would just say, always want to put your best foot forward, because I'm going to put it on YouTube if I like it. and it's going to be up there till at least the end of February of next year. So if you don't dig it, then, if you don't think your thing is perfect, don't send it to me. But if you make a trailer, I'll play it. I'll play it on the show, and if you want me to put it up, if you're telling me that there's going to be a movie coming, I'll put the trailer up as part of the film festival as well. And yeah, so there you go. So Brandon, yes sir. Send it in, get it done, make it happen. Flashdance that, son. Make that film. Get it out there. We want to read about it. So anyway, I think I'm going to end this episode number 531 of Robservations. What a great fun episode. I hope it was inspiring to all you filmmakers out there who maybe have made a film or have thought about making a movie. Those guys, those brothers, man, they're lucky to have one another, because I really think they've got something with the Wretched. And I want to see a good werewolf movie, and they clearly know how to shoot creatures. So really fun. And again, I'm going to be doing more interviews with people, and hopefully all the month of October and November I'll be having filmmakers come on to talk about their experiences to inspire you, the next generation of imagination connoisseurs. I want to thank everybody that, by the way, has become a member of this channel. First of all, I just want to point something out. We very much appreciate memberships for the channel, very much so, but they are additional to what's going on. The daily show is not going to change. And if you'd like to become a member, we do appreciate that. We're going to be expanding our reach, and that's what we would be doing for raising the extra funding, because there's more equipment that needs to be bought and things like that. So that's what that is for. I like seeing everybody who has the it's funny seeing people with light up names like Cardinal Sin, with the PGS, and seeing people's names in here. It's pretty neat, actually. It's kind of cool. And seeing the emojis that Mike Bodden keeps putting up. I keep seeing different emojis, and I think that's pretty cool. So, it was that's fun. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing that throughout the film festival, and I think having the Pierce brothers on here for our first interview during this time was great. And again, you don't have to be an asshole to make a movie. I mean, the Pierce brothers seem to be quite nice fellows. I can't believe I was in Sigus with Brett, and we didn't meet. We didn't cross paths. I should have gone to see his film. Damn it. But anyway, see The Wretched, watch it on for Halloween, and get back to me. Come back. Just because I told you it was great and that I really liked it doesn't mean you have to like it. That's what the Post-Geek Singularity community is all about. I think you will like it, because I think they really succeeded in doing what they set out to do. But anyway, I'm going to end this episode, Nightmare on Elm Street tonight. I want to say thanks to my moderators. Mike Bodden is here. Robert Priso is here. The Richard is here. Joshua Levesque is here. I don't know who else is here, but let me see. And thanks to people like Jeffrey Mao, Brian Hepburn, Tom Jackson Jr., Tom Jr. Jackson, all becoming members. This is terrific. And I also want to point out that Wiener Kill. Look, man, I don't know. I can't. I like Cheech and Chong movies. I liked R. Crumb comics. I like the Bondi Hipsters. I don't know why. Diesel Time and Shaggy, I could watch a whole feature with them. Anyway, it's the fourth film that's up for the first. It's the fourth official selection that's up for the first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival, which I think is only going to get better. By the way, you can still vote for posters. Go to the link on the website, theburnettwork.net, where that's up for another week at least. And remember, you can vote once a day for your favorite poster. You can go back the next day, and all the posters will move around. So there is no favoritism in terms of the order. It's random shuffling, which is pretty cool. I thank Mike for finding that. And I'm going to bring this stream to an end. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel, becoming members. I want to thank everybody for super chats and the tips and all of that. Very much appreciated, because we're going to be spending more and more money on the channel. So, thank you for that. And come see Elizabeth the Ace tonight on Whining About Movies. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to everybody, get in on the fun of the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day.